Second half of this, two more candidates to go. Robin, thank you for coming in this afternoon. We're delighted to have you. We hope you've enjoyed coming back close to home and enjoying, you and your husband enjoying New Smyrna Beach. What a protocol will be, we'll just offer you some opening remarks and then the opportunity to do your PowerPoint, and then we'll probably have some questions about your PowerPoint, and then we have a bank of questions. So with that, and you're free to stand, sit, or whatever you feel most comfortable presenting. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. Again, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. At the end of the day, it's always a great opportunity for all the city managers, I think, to go through the process. We learn a lot about ourselves. We learn about a little bit about, obviously, your community, but we also learn a lot about how we handle and present items to you as a commission. Also, I think just maybe where our weaknesses are and our strengths. So it's a good opportunity for all of us to go through this. Also, it allows the citizens to see what type of person I think we are and what we bring to the table. And I think that's important at the end of the day. Being very genuine to yourself and being who you are and being part of this community is critical going forward, so that they can see that is important also. So I truly appreciate this. I wish you the best in your selection. It's been an honor to be part of this, and let's go forward. Okay, so I looked at, I'll start here, challenges and opportunities. From my perspective, I looked at your biggest challenge for New Smyrna Beach as being the financial challenge affecting all the requests presented to you as for commission for consideration. Let's discuss those challenges and opportunities, and the way I address those is that your challenges for growth, for infrastructure, hurricane, sustainability concerns, the airport, strategic planning, and citizens and employee relations, all of those also relate to your financial budget, and that's where your opportunity opens up to be able to utilize that budget as you feel needs to be addressed in the future. Whoops. Infrastructures. So parking solutions, I did notice that you had inquired and installed a parking task force. Hopefully they brought back some solutions for you. Also think the P3s, private-public partnership is a valuable tool. I would suggest that going forward. Again, look at all your options. What type of pilot programs can you put in place to test? Testing of the pilot programs also gives you benchmarks. So where do you have some weaknesses and where do you have strengths? Is it a timing issue? There are several factors that should be taken into consideration, at least my understanding anyway, from a budget and a finance perspective before we buy land and build a $5 million facility or more. Although I've been very fortunate, and I'm sure some of you have too, in seeing that those structures do support themselves. Again, it's the outlay of money initially that's also the consideration. State Road 44 traffic plan. I saw in some of the documents I reviewed that you had looked at traffic calming as one of the options. This would be in a state road, FDOT requirements and restrictions. I feel like that you are at their mercy in making decisions along that route. But if they were to actually come out here on a weekend and see the traffic from the west to the east, they would understand your concerns. And I'm sure they have. I'm sure they've sent specialists here and account specialists as well as engineering specialists to come out and look at that traffic plan. But definitely some needs. Again, we want to be able to move the cars and our citizens from the west to the east, and we only have several routes in which to do that. So it is a challenge. Several of these other projects I've mentioned are really your grant projects in your CIP, and I've just mentioned them because you continually have to put these on replacement plans, and that's your sidewalks for safety, pedestrian movement. Right now you've got some funding in there from your CDBG grant, so that's a great source versus having to use your capital and your general fund, but your dock repairs are part of your general fund. Bridge replacement, again, a commission before you made the decision to take out a loan, or at least to start up the loan process. That's paid for those bridge replacements as well as some other capital improvement projects. Maybe in the future a suggestion would be to set up a restricted fund for saving money for bridge replacements before we get to that next point in time. Fire safety building, looked like there's some plans for next year to renovate a facility that was purchased. I don't know the total budget at this point in time. There was a dollar held in the CIP form of about $400,000. I'm sure that number needs to be relooked at. Costs go up daily on buildings, so I'm sure that's something you'll look at going forward. Dredging projects. You're very fortunate to have FDEP and FDOT, but this particular one was funded from your DOT. There are fine monies out there, and there are other budget funding sources out there from grants. I think going forward that just to exploit those to the best that you can do and go for grant funding will definitely benefit you, and it takes the impact off your general fund. And mobility plans, as we encourage those to come to New Smyrna Beach, youth, 30, 55 citizens age group, they bring children, they want to ride their bike, they want to be able to walk. The mobility plan becomes even more critical. You have a lot of that, but I think increasing that, improving that, allows them to see that they can stay here and they can truly be part of the community. We want their safety to be first. Growth, Innovation Park, or Deering Innovation Park. I was impressed with the P&Z board and some of the conversation I heard. I know you'll be receiving something very soon. But when you look at 1 million square feet of commercial property being put aside, possibly for up to 3 years prior to the building of the next phase, that truly allows for some high-tech jobs, some engineering, some science, some medical, some of those jobs that you're looking for that will actually help fill the households here in the city, as well as the feel of work and live in New Smyrna Beach, which is really what I believe you're trying to obtain. The new homes west of I-95, you've got a moratorium in place right now. You're part of a study. There's some great GIS information that's being collected and other data. Looking at that data before you develop your plan for the Venetian Bay area, and maybe in concert with making some changes to your LDC and your LDR and comp plan would actually move you forward so that before the next set of plans is presented to you, you've made those changes for what you would consider good growth or positive development in the future. So you've got the opportunity to make those changes ahead of time this time. And then the state requirements for attainable and affordable housing that will affect every city. Unfortunately, we have those mandates. You have been able to receive some funding from CDBG-DR, so disaster relief funds, for some attainable housing. But more importantly, you've built a partnership with the Housing Authority in which they're building homes from an affordable perspective. You've also dealing with the Habitat for Humanity. I heard last night from one of the residents that she was able to go and receive $35 million from the federal government for a Habitat for Humanity. Wow, that's amazing. And if that affects any of New Smyrna, that would be great. If it doesn't, maybe it can eventually come and help us out. So that was a great opportunity, and I hope I don't have those numbers right from that young lady that I met. And then you have CRA, Senior Affordable Housing, that you've spent some money into through your economic development program. So again, I feel like based on the state requirements, you've met their requirements of attainable and or affordable housing. Hurricanes. Well, we live in the state of Florida. And we're all affected by them. I was impressed with the Transform 386 program. I think it's a great program for our residents to at least have reimbursement opportunity, assuming they meet the criteria. I thought that was a great opportunity for them. Some of our homes on the coastline have been there for many years, along with the residents. So I think before some of these major hurricanes may not even carried insurance. So this reimbursement program has truly helped them, I'm sure. And then as we all know, insurance rates in the state of Florida and along the coast are becoming even more challenging, and I expect to see that grow. So programs like Transform 386 will probably become more valuable as we go forward. Elevation of the 24 single-family homes. In next year's budget, looks like you have 9 homes scheduled. In the notes that I saw from the past year, looks like 6 homes were planned. Some variation of numbers there. But again, wouldn't it be nice in the future to be able to see this program expand to utilize those monies? And I do know there are ARPA monies at this point in time, but maybe similar monies to be able to use that toward coastal flooding prevention versus lifting the homes. So let's assume that we can get all the homes in a good condition. It would be nice to be on the preventive side of that process. And emergency management plans, critical for our citizens to know what's going on. Spend the time and the effort to update them, notify them, utilizing the city resources, the social media, but whatever other plan we might need to. If we're constantly having new development, that means we have new neighbors, new people to the state of Florida. They may not know how to react to a storm, and we've got to be the one to inform them and include that and be able to empower our public safety, fire and police, to be able to go out there and take care of that plan as needed and to be able to implement it. Sustainability, a resiliency for the coastal flooding. I think it's important here for renourishment to be able to have plantings, whether they're the oak plantings or sea grapes, whatever it might be defined in the plan. I think it's important that we've taken care of our coastline for the generations to come and not just not addressing it. So I think that's an important piece of this. It does affect the coastal flooding. I understand sea rise and so forth, but it looks like we need to have at least a plan in place, a program in place that we can address that. Stormwater issues, I noticed there are several master plans. There's the West Side Historic and several others. I think putting these on a master plan schedule so you all can see one plan that has all the areas. So you've got Venetian Bay, you've got the Corbin Park, you have the historic West Side, you're going to have the coastline. So if you take the total, all the total plans and you encompass them into one, now we have something we can take to Tallahassee and request stormwater dollars. Last year, I know I presented $8.6 million of a need. They listen to you, but you have to present them the total picture and you have to give them an example of what you're trying to do. And again, it's a comprehensive plan at that point in time, but I think that's important. And then beach erosion. If we're fortunate to receive money from the county or the state, that's great, but if not, then what are we prepared to do to help our beaches? The airport operations, very intriguing. So the noise abatement study, I enjoyed watching the committee or team, the board discuss this. So the opportunity to change the runway and the timing was one of the options they presented. Another option was to look at the policies and procedures and truly enforce them. There's some policies that could be enforced that would help the citizens in that area during certain times of the day. There were some complaints about late evenings and so forth. So I truly appreciate the results of that. I think looking at a pilot program again is always a good option. Let's test and try and bring it back and then test and try again if that's what we need to do. The CIP projects out in the airport this year, they were fully funded between 80 and 100% using your FAA funds, so that was impressive. Did not impact the airport funds, so therefore those funds remain in that fund and they can be used for future maintenance and or capital improvement projects. So that truly leaves you the opportunity for the future with funds in that category. And then the strategic plan. So your plan was composed and put together in 2020. It looks like it needs to be updated. I think I read several different documents that suggested updating. Merging that with your budget would be critical in 2024 if that can happen. Creating a priority-based budget or at least the phasing in of a priority-based budget may be something you wish to consider. I think that if you align the budget needs with your strategic priorities, then there are less items that come before you during the year to create or ask you to approve new funding that you were not aware of, or we discussed and we just missed it in the budget. So those things happen, and aligning it with your strategic plan does minimize that need. From a citizen-employee relation, citizen involvement, so citizens come up for you as a commission, they mention things to you, they tell you things at your zone meetings. Having some type of small reserve to be able to address their issues, I do believe is important. If first of all, it means that we listened to them, we heard them, we've acknowledged their challenge, and we're trying to take care of it. The larger items are probably part of your strategic plan, so flooding is going to be part of the strategic plan, so I can see that already being included. Staff succession planning takes money. Unfortunately, you have to put the money in the budget to plan on adjustments, but if we're looking at long tenure employees, we need to look at our staffs at each department level and address the issues, resolve the issues, and then plan on promotion if that's what's needed to encourage the tenure or to at least encourage adjustments in the division as far as the leadership. And then team building, just in general, SWOT analysis and team retreats and morale building. Those things are important. Those don't cost money. That's part of your city. But the recruitment, retention, and retirements do cost money. So as we see retirements, there's a cost for payouts. There's a cost for the fact that we've lost a tenured employee, so now we have to replace him with a rookie. That rookie's not going to know the same thing that that senior employee might have known for a year or more. And then how do we retain those who are being recruited from other cities? It happens every day. So how do we maintain our current employees? Very critical to your budget. So you see how these challenges become the opportunity for the financing. I think that to move away eventually from the general fund funding everything, our general fund is a small portion of our budget. It's the larger portion on the general fund side, but it's a small portion in total when you look at $111 million. It's $50 million, or just around under that. So we've got to look at other sources. I believe some of those other sources could be appropriations from the state perspective. It does take a team to go up to Tallahassee. Commissioners, you carry the most weight. Having you in Tallahassee with those other legislators is very important. A lobbyist, a city lobbyist, costs you about $50,000 a year, but they also write grants. And value of that means that you're going to receive more grant funding. I can just tell you from experience, one year I received $2.25 million from the state appropriations. $1 million of that came from for a sewer line project, and $1.2 million came from to raise a park that was underwater. Also, $36 million we received for dredging from the fine. So there are big dollars out there. We just have to identify what the needs are. Grants, again, applying for more grants. Keep in mind that as you apply for grant, receive a grant, a lot of times matching funds are required. Your appropriation dollars can be used as your matching fund, whereas right now we're using the dollars from general fund. So again, it takes the load off the general fund, and that's the goal here. The fund balance, we meet the minimum requirement, 17%. I do believe on a coastal community it should be 25, eventually 35. You need to have that reserve there for, it could be for hurricanes in the time period in which we're not paid, but it could be for other things. The millage rate for our citizens here is relatively low, especially compared to our sister communities. I'm sure you would like to keep it at that point. I think that's always the goal of staff, to keep it at that point or less. But you still have to consider things like the impact of retention and retirement and recruitment. It's always there for you. We've got our CBAs in which we're always trying to look at how we, again, keep those employees and just staying competitive in the future. So there are opportunities from the budget side, but there are also challenges from the budget side. And at the end of the day, we deal in projects and budget. And I thank you. I'll open it up to questions.
Sure. Thank you so much for that presentation, Robin. We appreciate your thoughtfulness. Is there a question on that presentation before we go into our regular questions? Seeing none, let's proceed into the regular questions. We'll start with our Vice Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for all your diligence in that research of our city. You're very well versed with our needs. Here's a question that is regarding to benchmarking and finance. We've recently lost our finance director, so we're going to need somebody strong, I believe, in finance. So tell me about a time, how and when in your past city management, that you've used city benchmarking comparisons for our particular staffing, revenues, expenses, leisure services, and to compare us to other cities by using those type of tools and trend analysis type tools.
Sure, thank you. The Florida Benchmark Consortium is one of those groups here in Central Florida. I've been part of that group since probably 2002. It's a small group, but they track and they define what a benchmark is for any one category. So the one I will use will be code enforcement. I'll use that one as my example. They define what each of the benchmarks happen to be. So it's the same definition for every city that's part of that consortium. They have to look at number of cases, number of FTE, the time it takes for the cases to be resolved, but it's very clearly defined by the benchmark consortium. Then they report that, and they report that back to only the city. So it's not a document you can receive online because they don't publish it for the public. They publish it for that city that may be part of that membership. And that document shows the cities by category. So let's say that the cities are at a population of 50,000, so you'll see cities in your scope of 50,000 that would be maybe 40 to 60, or if you're 32,000 as New Smyrna Beach, you might look at 25 to 35 or 40. So you can truly see cities that are similar to you, what their benchmarks are for number of people, FTEs as we would count them. You might see each of the categories they felt were important. Now, there may be some cities that actually count other things. They're welcome to do that, but they would count the standard items, and they do ask that you at least involve all of your team into all of those standard items, just because that's the only way to truly benchmark a city against a city. So it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work for staff to do. I utilized that when I was looking at applying staff or requesting new staff for my code enforcement. We were very much understaffed. Did not realize that we were a city of about 40,000. We thought we had plenty of code enforcement officers for the number of code cases that we had on file. But when we started looking at it compared to other cities, we were truly understaffed. And the staff kept telling us the number of cases they were looking at. But it was a good way to present that data. We presented that as part of our budget request to the commission and requested that they at least consider adding on a step plan a number of employees to at least bring us close to that. We may not reach that number, may not need that number, but at least add it. Let's say what our benchmarks are next year. We looked at that as an interim process and policy. So we added, if I'm not mistaken, we added 1.5 the first year, and then we waited a year before we asked for another position because we needed to see the analysis of that come back before we could present it back to commission. It was successful. I went through that for 4 years, and we brought that team up to 7 individuals from 3. And our caseload went down, but more importantly, our time and response to the citizens went down, and coming back before the magistrate went down.
Did you use that in more than the category of code enforcement?
For every category. So it starts out with, so I may not remember all of them, but all of your building permits and building departments heavy into this. I believe that was probably the beginning of it when it was started. Some of you may remember Susan Boyer from Port Orange when she was there, but she's part of that program now. She was always in the program when I met her, from the time I've met her. But code enforcement's heavy. Your utility systems are heavy as part of that because there's a lot of benchmarking in your miles of pipe and your miles of road and your miles of sidewalk. So all those are in there. Your infrastructure is broken up by roads and streets and so forth. So it's a very detailed, and it's probably a binder 3 inches thick if you were to print it all off.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you hold staff to objectives and KPIs when raises aren't tied to performance?
I think a monthly to quarterly meeting, looking at the results of what they've obtained is a good starting point. Years ago, I was worked for a company, and we had performance measures, performance raises. And when you have a performance raise program or a performance merit program, everyone looks at them a little different. It's easier to hold people accountable at that point in time. But if I look at what the expectations are, and they've defined those expectations with me, we've sat down and we've discussed those expectations. They've defined them. They've put the measures in place. So it's not a number that is just crazy that I've expected. It's a number that they expect from themselves. I think if you hold them accountable on a monthly basis and then a quarterly basis, it's a lot easier to hold them when it comes to the performance review accountable for that. I stress and I feel it's very important for each director. They're in a professional experience position that they need to own their department, they need to own their actions, and they are going to be held accountable for those. And those include the KPIs or the metrics. Those include anything to do with their staff and their section of the government, whether it's building, water, doesn't matter, sewer, whatever it might be.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that.
I have 2 more questions, but I didn't know if anybody wanted to elaborate on that.
No, you're draining it really well. Thank you very much.
So I have an economic development question for you. We have an out-of-balance budget ratio burden on our residential taxpayers right now. Our ratios are currently 85-15, and the balance should be closer to 60-40. We've had a lot of residents that are concerned about that and the property tax issues there. Tell me how you've handled a similar situation and balance between proper growth and better job opportunities for economic development for your community versus no growth?
So I was in another local city. We had the opportunity for what we called an innovation district, pretty common name when you're looking at building for the future. We actually went in and started planning years ahead, but unfortunately a road opening actually pushed up the schedule. We had to move our schedule up, and that was actually when I was brought in. So I was kind of brought in a little late, but they had began the planning. But what we found out is that it really required the hometown community involvement. We had to get people together. The community had to understand the impact on the commercial side. What did that mean? That meant that we might have some buildings of height so that we could have some density for our businesses, and we were looking at high tech, graphic design, art, very much that in the alignment with radio stations and TV stations. So some of that is a little higher end than others, and we had a lot of engineering requests. So we looked at where these buildings could go. We looked at the roadmap for this community that we were looking at, Innovation District, and the housing that was out there. If we built the commercial side first, which was really the direction of the commission, we could estimate what we thought the revenue base would be. It actually changed us. We were at 80-20, changed us to 70-30 in 2 years. I don't know the numbers now, so I apologize because I am not there anymore, but I know they went very quickly, they progressed. But they put up 4 large buildings, and they were 7-story. One was 7, I think one was 3. The other 2 were built later, somewhere between the 3 to 7, and some restaurants and amenities there for the houses that have now actually opened in that area. They've sold. So the numbers have moved. We had a lot of community engagement, a lot of community input. Staff really had to step up. We actually hired consultants so that we could bring in professionals to help us, because your staff, as much as they're great at what they do on a day-to-day basis, large projects require maybe a little more knowledge or a little bit more, research. So we brought in another staff from a consulting firm that handled these projects. I had the good fortune of working with Dr. Levy, and Dr. Levy is out at Lake Nona, and we brought Dr. Levy on right when I started. I'd worked with him in another city and asked for his guidance and direction, because as much as our economic development person really understood growth from being in the Castleberry area, again, you need someone who's really had gone through it. And if you look at Innovation District out at Lake Nona, you know that they have all the latest, whether it's medical, whether it's tennis, whatever it might be. So we needed that expertise. We reached out and we utilized that. I don't feel like that staff could have been experts in that area, but I would say we truly engaged everyone, businesses and citizens, and listened to the staff, listened to these experts, and listened to the commission.
Thank you. I have one more for you.
Okay.
So after you've had an opportunity to watch our previous city commission meetings and learn about this board, as well as last night engaging with our citizens and also our staff, if you think about all of the recent things you've learned since you've done your PowerPoint, do you have any suggestions for our city improvement going forward and maybe the priority of that?
Again, I think it's your budget's limited. Any budget is for any city. I start with that because we, everything's affected by that. Your staff, the number of staff, your employees, the projects that you can do in the public, whether it doesn't matter if it's general fund or other funds. Again, that budget controls what we can do. We know that we come to you for approval, and you're having to prioritize those approvals. I think just going through that process and making sure that all the staff, departments have enough employees to handle the needs of the community, not being able to process permits fast enough. Is that a deficit because of, and I'm just giving an example, I don't know that that's the case, so let me preface that. But if that were the case, is that because we don't have enough people in that department or enough people with the knowledge, or is it just because, we're backed up, we have so many? So looking at processes is important. Let's identify the process, and then let's look at the solutions of that process, and that takes that department and sometimes other departments. So sometimes sometimes that process may require the fire department, fire marshal, because they're involved in that, may require the police. So anyone else who approves those permits, it's a holistic approach. I've been very impressed with what I've seen with your staff here. What I did notice, unfortunately for them, there's a lot of new directors. So that's a plus and a negative, right? So they may bring some new experience and some new situations, and that's great. But the negative is they don't have the history. And I've learned in my course of promoting to move on to another city, and I've promoted and moved on. What I lose when I do that is the history, and I have to rely on someone else for that history. I was very impressed, as I've stated before, with the commission, and I feel like a very harmonious commission. You speak, you talk, and then you decide, and at the end of the day, that's what we have to present to you so you can make those policy changes and those policy directives, is present you information. We just have to present you enough of the information and all the information and be very open with that and very honestly tell you if we feel there are problems, because how would you know that otherwise? You might hear from a citizen, but otherwise it should come from us. So, but I do feel we have to present you all of that for you to make those policy decisions. But I was very impressed with everything. I enjoyed the citizens last night. I would like to see that involvement every time there's something that happens, because that's where most of your data comes from.
Thank you.
Appreciate those remarks. Commissioner Martin?
And Mr. Mayor, just to let you know, we're about 30 minutes into the session.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, well, all right. My first two, I think you've already touched on, but number one is, what's your basis for budgeting? What's your ground zero for budgeting?
Again, I think you utilize the strategic plan and you do priority basing, which would be zero. And then you work up from there. I think you know, I don't always do a zero-based budgeting. I have done those before. Sometimes history gives us a good estimate for the past, tells us what to do for the future. But I think knowing the priorities from you, the commission who will set the policy, is what we have to do first. You always have to budget your debt first. Debt comes out first, then employees, and then what we have left is what we have left. So that's kind of the general basic budgeting, but you still have to look at those other processes.
I find budgeting is also philosophical.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
The other one is, and again, you've touched on this a bit, we look at our ad valorem taxes and discuss that a lot, but that's really at the moment about 27% of our total budget. What other funding creative funding, where else have you found pots of money to help do the projects we want to do?
I mentioned it earlier, so I'll state that again, the appropriations. So I can go back probably 10 years and give you examples. I was very fortunate, and when I was in Winter Garden, we went to Tallahassee. We fought for money. We were able to receive several different projects, mainly water projects at that point in time, state appropriations. In Oviedo, we built Oviedo in the Park. It was a $14 million project. We were able to receive state funding, about $750,000 for a parking lot. So again, we looked to the state for those numbers, rather than take those from the dollars from our general fund or our capital improvement fund. And then in Mount Dora, I think I was somewhere around $6 million that we were able to get for our water, sewer, and our electric. We had electric services over there, so we were able to receive money for that. And then most recently in Cocoa Beach, we were able to receive 2.12, but we had also received $36 million for dredging projects because of the Indian River Lagoon and some of the needs there. So there's pots of money out there, but you have to fight for that money. You have to be willing to go and look for that. There are other revenue sources, but that's just the first blush.
Thank you. Okay, then back to the traditional questions here. Flip pages, flip pages. Please describe your understanding of the unique dynamics of our community and organization. What's unique and how we operate?
Again, you're a coastline, not an interior city. So I'll say that first because you're going to deal with the storms on the coastline, right? So FEMA dealing with the hurricanes. Your emergency management has to always be ready and has to be implemented. You as a commission have to always be ready to enact that emergency authority. So that it's very unique unless you're in an interior city, and then you don't have quite the same impact. So that's a good thing for those folks. I think also the fact that you have multi-zones that are very different. I can go from Venetian Bay to the historic side. I can go out to the coastal community. I can drive around the city, and I really have 5 or 6 different types of communities within this community. It's not all set up the same. It doesn't all look the same. That's an advantage. Everybody's looking for something different. But I think because of that, you also run into challenges. Each of those subsections or zones runs into its own challenges, and we're trying to budget or not just budget, but we're trying to create plans to fix all of them. I think you have to look at the city from west to east, east to west, north to south, and make some decisions on changes that might need to happen. The uniqueness, the arts, the crafts, the downtown. You have 2 downtowns. A lot of cities would do anything to have 1 downtown. You have 2 what I would consider downtowns. You have 2 areas that offer, very different opportunities. One maybe a little more for tourists. The other one's still tourists, but maybe more for the locals. Again, that doesn't happen in a lot of locations. So there are several factors, I think, that kind of encompass the city, yet it's very homey. It's very welcoming. And I think that's important. It's also, I think the mixture of demographics also lets you have a little more opportunity to expand because you're not one set of demographics.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Describe a time when you were met with strong resistance to a change you implemented, and how did you overcome it?
You have to look at code and policy. So mine was really looking at, I had to remove a person from a position, and that was presented to commission. They actually are the ones who have to do that. They have the authority to remove that position. I presented the case with all the data, and then we resolved it together in conversation. It was to the betterment of the citizen or the employees, because again, how does that affect the citizens? Anything that the employees do affect the citizens. If they're being trained better and they're in a better position to help the citizens, then that's one of the things that should happen. And I know that's an awkward one, but I had to bring it before my commission, one of those items for commission.
Is that the change that you implemented?
It was a change, yes.
Okay.
You want to know the change specifically?
Well, no. I mean, so what I now understand is that removing a person from a position that required commission approval was a change that benefited the organization.
It did. It benefited the organizational structure. It benefited the employees' morale and the overall layout of that department, which benefited the citizens because their customer service they were receiving was not there.
Okay.
Can you,
yeah.
can you appreciate the personnel issue, Robin? Thank you. How about a programmatic change that you received resistance to?
Sure. So a programmatic change was adding an engineering position to help. And again, I don't know if that's, I know I'm back into those positions, so I apologize. I had those on my mind. Okay. Another one would be for. We updated and provided our employees with program or a opportunity to increase their ability to become certified. So it was a new program. We reached out and worked with the department director. We looked at if they looked for certification programs in the water sewer division or whatever it might have been, that we would implement a increase to their salary for that 25 cents or 50 cents. Again, improving their opportunity to grow in the city. So that was the new program we instituted. We had to go through LIUNA, have approval. Again, it was quite a undertaking. Commission eventually approved that once we presented it back to them. But it affected the departments and being able to retain and keep the employees in those departments. Otherwise, I think at that point in time, we already had 2 employees that were being recruited from another local city. This actually retained those 2 employees. Apologize, ma'am.
Okay, I think I've got one more. Is that?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Where are we? Give us an example of a time when you faced obstacles that kept you from meeting a goal, and what did you do about it?
So we created a strategic plan in 1 year. The next year we were supposed to create the metrics to that strategic plan because we finished the strategic plan so late in the current year. The challenge, having really qualified and engineering type of people to help us create those those KPIs or metrics, we were not prepared for that. We thought we had the people on board that would understand that. I had to go back to commission 3 times and apologize that I did not bring them the KPIs or the metrics. We worked through for the next year with an engineering firm to develop those. It was for a water treatment plant and a water system. It just was a little bit out of our scope initially. We didn't believe it would be, and that was our fault for not recognizing it. I felt it was important to explain that to commission. They did give us an extension. We left it in our strategic plan, and the second year we brought back some KPIs. Again, not from our work, but we utilized an engineering firm to help us. After that, they gave us a template and an understanding for future programs.
Who gave you a template?
The engineering firm.
The engineering firm that you hired
That we
to
hired.
help you get out of this little
That's
pitfall
correct.
you had fallen into,
Yes, ma'am.
and then gave you a template to move forward.
They did. They helped us to look at what was important from these certain systems, right? So we had looked at it from maybe an end user perspective and not a system perspective, and that was our fault. And it was the first time this team had ever looked at those metrics. They had never developed any before. So it was a great learning experience. I had to go back and apologize and accept that, and that was in my part of my review process. So I appreciated that. I learned from that also.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Commissioner McGurk.
Thank you, Robin. You've been very clear and concise with your answers so far. Appreciate that. Tell us about a time you had to inspire or energize an unmotivated employee or group of people, and how did you do that, and what was the result?
So I've gone through several retreats, and I felt like I actually had that with my leadership team when I started at a city. I felt like a retreat was a good way to get out and let's learn each other. Let's become a partnership. Let's build a relationship. So part of that was the retreat, sitting down, learning each other, going through a SWOT analysis of each other, not of us individually, but what we brought to the table when I say each other. So our team approach. We went through that process. We went through this for probably about 6 months, about every 2 to 3 weeks. We built that relationship so that I could raise the morale. I had a very team that was just not real productive. They were very honestly just not supportive of us moving forward with our charge from the commission at that point in time. So I had to rebuild trust with them. We had to build plans and direction, and then we had to show, I had to show them that was the direction the commission also was agreeing with, by that being part of the strategic plan. And I reaffirmed that with the commission at a quarterly meeting so they could see that. So showing that training and that morale boosting, I do believe that's important. They had lost somewhere around 5 or 6 directors just prior to that point. So it was a dysfunctional team. That's the best I can describe it. But through talking and sitting down and going through it, we also brought in an HR specialist that was neutral, that could help us walk through some of the challenges that we faced.
Thank you. Describe what the term integrity and ethics mean to you. Tell us about a time when your integrity was challenged, and how did you handle it?
So integrity, so for me, is being honest, forthright. It is part of who you are. The ethics that we all employ is to be upfront and honest and tell everything that we know in the sense that we know it, but also to uphold the laws. I mean, the laws are what we have before us. They're black and white, and to carry those out as best we can. If we can't carry those out, then we should reach out to someone to assist us, and that someone could be city attorney or someone of that sort. I've had that in several situations where I've been pushed because I listened to complaints and brought forth members of the team as removing them or releasing them or putting them on leave because of those accusations. So I feel that if it's supported and if it's investigated, that I have an obligation, if I've been told something, to go forth and investigate that. And if that means that that person has been found, I hate the word use guilty, but if that person has been found guilty of something, that I have to uphold that and present that and move forward with whatever requirements of removing that person or giving them time off that it would require. I think it's who we are, and if we don't stand up for ourselves and for what we believe in, again, truth and honesty, then what else do we have?
Good. Tell us the steps you have taken to get a capital project back on track when it was at risk for not being completed on time. If you have experience on that, please share with us.
Who hasn't in capital projects? So again, we typically carry 4 projects. I think that's another good example. They don't finish on time, but I'll use Oviedo in the Park. We began the project, a $14 million project. An amphitheater, a dog park, a veterans park, a playground, and a bathroom. And sometimes through that process, we became bogged down in engineering evaluations and into value engineering, I should say it that way, and into looking at the process and also making changes, right? So at some point, we had to stop the changes to the plan that was put into place because I think at that time we probably had already delayed a good 6 months to 9 months just from making changes. So that was my project. It was these are our final changes. No more changes, again, because that 6 months really equated to more than a year of build time. Delay. So I think that you realize when you're building a very large project that sometimes large projects have so many components that you can't possibly always stay on time for all of them, but having a true timeline, having a true budget, having a true accountability for each subsection of that project helps keep it online. We had quite a bit of responsibility in several different people, and we split that out a little bit also. We put too much on several departments to maintain, but we still were behind, but we still pulled it back in from what it could have been.
Okay. Thank you. My final question is going to be, tell us about a time you had to tactfully confront someone about his or her inappropriate behavior. How'd you handle that?
So I'm a very straightforward and honest person, and I actually pulled them into my office with my HR director, told him straight up what was being presented and he was being accused of, and that these were his options. Right. Plain and simple.
Thank you for your forthright answers, Commissioner Hartman.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
What was your biggest mistake and what you've made it work? What did you do about it, and what did you learn from that process?
So I made a mistake of putting an item on an agenda, explaining the item to all the commission, as I do on a biweekly basis, walking them through each of the items. A lot of times, our challenge from a city manager perspective, we assume whatever we say that you might understand, and this was a new commissioner, and first of all, that was my mistake. I didn't explain everything thoroughly. I also should have really learned his way of questioning and asking questions because we all communicate differently. So that was another mistake. I thought I had answered all of his questions, and they were varied in questions, whether it's budget and FTE and the scope of the project. It was several different questions. So I added the item to the agenda, left it on there. In hindsight, that was my mistake. I should have pulled the item and given him a little more of a chance to ask questions later. Also had 2 other commissioners that were new that had not asked questions on that project. I did not, my mistake, I didn't ask them if they had the same questions that he had. Again, I tried not to tried not to ask the same questions of each other, so I didn't create any challenges from being a conduit or mentioning things that I shouldn't. So I was trying to be very cautious there. And my mistake is I left the item on the agenda. I should have pulled it it was 2 weeks. I should have pulled the item. I should have made sure all of them were content with it and happy with it. And I should, I also have an obligation to learn to communicate with each person. That sometimes is a little more challenging because we all communicate and our definitions of certain things are different. And I did not look into that enough before I put the item on there and tried to explain it to him.
Thank you. What is your greatest personal struggle or limitation in supervising others? Give us an example of a time when you overcame one of your limitations to resolve a problem.
I would say I probably expect more out of everyone than is probably sometimes fair. So my expectations are high. I expect each person to own their job. I expect them to be accountable for that. I lost an employee from that. So I think you can push too hard. I think today's world, there are HR out there that help us from a perspective of not pushing too far. There's a balance between life at home, life at work, and other things we do. And so I had to learn early on not to push that as hard as I was pushing myself. Very honestly, so when you lose an employee that's a very valued employee, it hits home.
Thank you.
I didn't do that again. I haven't yet, let me say that.
What do you consider to be New Smyrna Beach's single biggest asset in attracting new business and industry?
Your location and the fact that you're close to Kennedy Space Center, your opportunity for engineering, sciences, the location to I think there's several, your location to I-4, to 95, the access points, and then your community, your homes, the quality of life you have here. It all wraps up into one. There's not a single point that you can state that wouldn't include all of those.
Thank you.
So I've got a few to follow up, Robin. How do you facilitate open and transparent communication with the governing body, with the staff, boards, commissions, residents, and all other stakeholders?
So sitting down and speaking with them, talking through issues. Again, as I said earlier, I think the biggest challenge is communicating, learning how to communicate with each of you, learning how to understand your question, learning the same from the stakeholders, right? So learning when you're at a civic group, they're looking for just information. So learning to give that information out to that civic group and providing that data. With staff, it's sitting down and having those conversations with them. It's been asking them their goals, listening. I think probably is the biggest key we all, sometimes miss is to sit and listen. So for me, the first meetings, I'm listening and I'm writing notes and I'm going back to look to see what the common denominators might be. But I think the bigger challenge is figuring out how we speak to each other, communicate. Are we on the same wavelength? Are we thinking the same? And if we're not, how do we get there? And then having that very open conversation that we're not on that same wavelength. I had that with one other commissioner before, and it was probably 3 months to where we finally were able to sit in a room and really discuss issues. Once I understood what he was looking for, and I started giving him the metrics and the information, and then let him ask questions, it was easier. So you have to learn each personality, and you have to learn what they're expecting. I think the same can be said for staff, and I think the same can be said for the stakeholders or the civic groups and the community. The community wants to hear all the data, so provide it to them, but provide it in a sequential order or at least in a logical order where it makes sense to them.
Thank you. Appreciate that. As a city manager, you'll be responsible for juggling numerous projects and initiatives simultaneously. You tell us about how you manage multiple projects and communicating the progress to the appropriate people and specific procedures to keep everyone abreast of the schedule.
Sure. So recently, we began building a city hall. We went through that process from 2022. I was instructed to start the city hall after 20 years of it not moving, of no funding, of no plans. I began that in April By August, we had a bid on the street. Along with that, we were slip lining with our sewer system, another $4 million project plus $3.8 million from CDBG funds. Along with that, we were remodeling and looking at our golf course and investing approximately $1.5 million into the golf course, and that was another project that needed to move forward. We also had several parks that we were looking at to renovate, just over $2.5 million in project money for those parks. And then along with that, we also were looking at new plans for upgrading the current facility that we were all in. So that was another couple $1 million. So from that August time frame of putting that bid out, we maneuvered through until the following October when we actually let the contract for that city hall. It began in January. We also let the contract in December for the funds for the CDBG for the slip lining. We also, again, began the state appropriation use of those funds. We began the project for the golf course in January and finished it by August, September timeframe, just before the storms, just before Ian and Nicole, which was really in November. So again, those are projects that you have to keep going. All of that while we were still operating, day-to-day operations. I think there were probably 8 projects totaling somewhere around, the city hall alone was 14 million, 10 to 14 million. Probably our projects totaled somewhere in the $22 million range. But those were the projects in a 2-year time period that we were able to implement. So really start, implement, and in some cases complete. The city hall will be completed this year.
It's an impressive list of what you did. Can you tell me again how?
Oh, sorry, sir. I
How'd you
apologize.
I mean, I'm impressed. It's a lot. Talk to us about how you do it.
Sorry, apologize. The teams, again, staff. I give all the credit to the directors of each of those programs. They were, again, I just hold them accountable to come up and give me reports, keep me involved. I then keep the commission involved, but I stay on top of the programs to understand where we're at. I move them through if I need to. I make sure that the agenda items are being presented and that we're staying on track with that. So that's my portion of it. But so much of that is the department directors and their experts and the fact that they own each of those projects, and I'm holding them accountable. At the end of the day, they are the ones who understand the needs. I just need to enforce those and encourage those.
Appreciate that.
My
Thanks for the
apologies.
follow-up. Can you tell us how you have or how you would help a divided governing body achieve consensus on politically charged issues?
I think that I have an obligation to provide you all the data, everything that's available for any type of item. I then have the obligation to listen to you and to try to build a consensus. From my perspective, that the city manager reports to the commission, but they're there also to provide you information, to give you anything they've heard and to help build that consensus. Maybe it's step by step with each one of you, figuring out where you're at along this journey, and then figure out if there's 2 or 3 that are in a little different viewpoint. How do I incorporate that viewpoint into the overall perspective? I think the goal of each city manager is to massage that data, present it back to you all. There's going to be times that you're divided, but if you at least set up there and you can just speak about it, discuss it, at the end of the day, you make those decisions and policy, but I do have the obligation to try to work with you and to encourage that, not agreement, but I would just say that a consensus.
Okay, very good. One more. How do you effectively handle having so many bosses who sometimes have differing goals or agendas?
Listening, it's the best thing I can say right now. I think you have to listen to each of you. Again, I have to learn how to communicate with you. I'm a list person. I make lists out. I try to figure out a common theme, a common denominator that each of you are looking for. At the end of the day, I try to accommodate as much as I can, provide you the experts in the field of our city management staff to answer your questions. Again, upfront, honest. I think that transparency is not just a word, but it's important, and I think I have to be as transparent with you if there's a challenge so that you can carry that out and decide what you wish to do with that. But I don't let too many things get to me. I listen, I learn, and I try to learn from my mistakes, and I make mistakes like anyone else. So I think that's the most important thing is I learn from my mistakes, and I'll be glad to say those on the dais, and I'll be glad to say that to my staff. But at the end of the day, I will strive to provide what services you're expected out of me.
Appreciate your candor there. Any other questions that have not been asked that you all may have thought of? Going to give you, oh yeah, we do have, okay,
I
good.
do.
Sorry, I missed that.
This is a lot of task and very challenging position. What is your availability and how do you juggle your personal and business time?
So I'll take the latter half of that and hope that I don't miss the first half. So I apologize ahead of time if I did, but or if I do. I have a very supportive family. I have a wonderful husband. We've been together for many years. He's very supportive of my growth and my professional direction. He was here with me last night, so he supports that. I think that starts there. I think having outside time, having time that's to your own. I get to have vacation time, so to speak, or weekend time with the grandkids. They truly change your perspective on life. So I think those things are important. I have my faith time, and I think that's important. And then I think that if you've done those things in unison and everybody's on the same page, it comes back to your time and to the city time. I've always been someone who's committed my day and my evening as need be to the city, as I've worked for many cities, to tell you that there's one pathway that I look at. I don't take a lot home, but I go into the office and stay, and I work. I try to, when I get home, that's home. There's always times when there's a phone call or there's an instance of an issue that I may have to reach out to you or that I may have to go address. That is what it is, and I accept that. But I do try to take myself when I do get home as being the wife and the mother, and I try to separate that as best I can. But I don't think you always do that. But I do feel I have an obligation. I'm going to fulfill that obligation, and in the beginning, we're talking a lot of hours. There's a lot to learn, a lot to get to know with a new city, and it's just going to take a lot of time initially. So you've had the advantage of some very seasoned city managers. They've got history here. That's an advantage to them. So I don't see any new manager coming in having that advantage. So it will take time for them to reacclimate themselves, learn the city, learn the history, learn the policies, learn the code, learn the people, learn how to work with you, learn how to work with the civic groups. I don't even have a clue as to how that time will be utilized, but you do work through that.
Thank you.
Do you have one? Okay, very good. We appreciate your thoughtful answers to those questions. And we're going to give you an opportunity for closing remarks, but we thought that we'd give you an opportunity now to ask us a question. Is there anything you'd like to know about the commission or the city or our perspectives on anything at all? Feel free.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, I appreciate your time. Yesterday was a great event. Truly was nice getting to know each of you in the individual interviews and staff. They were very gracious to all of us. I'm sure that the others felt the same way. I did ask my questions yesterday. I don't want to take more time up from the commission, but I do want to say thank you. The consultant has been wonderful, and I hope our data that we provided to you has been helpful. I wish New Smyrna Beach the best. I think that you've got some wonderful candidates, and it'll be a great city going forward. It's been a great city. I don't see that changing, and I just appreciate this opportunity, so thank you very much.
Ms. Hayes, we admire you for your accomplishments and your varied background and your contribution here to make us stronger here today, and wish you the very best. We will get back to you as soon as we're finished with the deliberations, and I'm not sure that they'll be done today, but as soon as we can, we'll get back to you. If you have no questions and those are your closing remarks, that's all we have. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
How do we stand there, Mr. Timekeeper?
I asked Scott to be here at 1:30, but I'm going to ask him if he can be here a little earlier. So we
Good.
wrapped up a little quicker than I thought we were there.
Very
Thank you.
good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We will recess and waiting for the last. Okay, we're going to resume activity here. We're rolling and broadcasting to the remote viewers, and we've got an audience here in the room. The last of the candidates is Mr. Scott Moy. Scott, welcome. We're delighted you're here. Thank you for you and your lovely girlfriend coming and spending some time to learn more about us. Our protocol this afternoon was to have you make your opening remarks and then roll into your PowerPoint. We might ask you some questions at the end of the PowerPoint about your PowerPoint, and then we will have a bank of questions for you. Feel free to stand at the podium or sit in the chair for either or both. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to just say I appreciate the honor and the privilege to come and interview. It's been really, really good. No matter what happens, I've enjoyed myself. Great. Was not expecting the hospitality, and it's been really, really nice. Also, can everybody hear me? I don't know if I'm standing too enough.
Bring the microphone a little closer to
Okay.
you.
Okay. But for those who may not know, I'm Scott Moy, and I desire to be your next city manager. And that's my goal out of all of this, is to do what I can to hopefully persuade you and show that I think I am the right candidate. But with that, I'll go ahead and get started, if I can see, with my PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint that I have is basically going through the challenges and opportunities of what I think are from my perspective, and I'll get into this in just a second, from my perspective and my view of the issues that are out there, along with some other issues that'll be at the end of my my presentation. And the first one there, to give you an idea of where I'm at and what I'm thinking, is, as it says there, my preface to all this is my professional diverse background, 30 plus years of being in this business. I think it's really a benefit. Also too, there hasn't been a lot that I haven't seen in the challenges you have here. Also too, I have a very diverse background in dealing with the types and sizes of the challenges you have. And on top of that, the challenges that you all face are faced by multitude of communities, and but they are not insurmountable. They're where we can attack them and come out to the good side of that. There's a lot of communities that desire to have your challenges in many ways. And also, too, one of the biggest issues there is I'm not intimidated or hesitant to take on these challenges, by no means. And I look forward to that. Under the effective managing growth section, the strategic plan mission there is the New Smyrna Beach will accommodate new growth and investment while maintaining its distinct community character, quality of life, and environmental resiliency. The purpose of that would be for a strong need to balance development in New Smyrna Beach with preservation of natural, environmental, historic, archaeological, and recreational resources for the benefit of New Smyrna Beach's present and future generations. And parts of that, as far as the components in doing this, you need modern zoning and subdivision development ordinances that are up to date and kept up to date. Comprehensive plan, the LDC, Land Development Code, your flume changes needs to be done on a periodic basis, reviewed, and also from the standpoint of looking toward the future. Another thing there is be mindful of parcel splitting and your densities. That's one of the things that I stress is the density levels are the key. Also consider your daytime population. I've faced this in other communities where a lot of times daytime populations are just ignored. But because of the folks who are coming here as far as tourists, you got county residents in an unincorporated area coming in. Sometimes folks don't realize that. Also, too, always consider impact fees and review of your fee schedules, and always make sure you're keeping up with inflation, and also, too, what's going on around you with other local governments and what fee schedules they have as a comparison. Also consider incompatible development that's encroaching on residential properties. It could be from the county side. Also, along with that, focus on redevelopment of dilapidated property and infill. More conservation and passive parks. Those passive parks can be used a lot like conservation, and the focus there would be to provide those openings. Walkable communities, off-street parking, very important. And on top of all that, make sure you keep in mind private property rights. From a legal standpoint, it could be contentious. Public engagement. The priorities there is transparency, engage in early and often, as much as you can with the public, establish a culture of openness and transparency in order to inspire. That makes the constituents and the citizens feel like the door's open, so to speak, and they can bring their issues and problems and complaints to the commission. Make sure you're always establishing two-way communication for discussion. Highlight education and constituent awareness, always trying to put information out that informs and educates. And also, too, and I've added one here just recently, yesterday as a matter of fact, and this is one of the issues I deal with on a daily basis, is make sure you process and track citizen complaints in a big way. The strategies in doing that, public comments at scheduled meetings. I know that's kind of a hot topic, especially with what I've been seeing, not just here, but in other communities. Public information, open houses, excuse me. Public information and open houses is the key there. Excuse me. Planning meetings, civic club presentations on a periodic basis. That's something that I personally do to get out to speak to the civic clubs and the clubs there to inform and update the public on what's going on. Individual conversations in the community. What that is basically when I'm out and about, I always try to make myself approachable and available for folks who may have comments or questions, even if it's after hours or on weekends, what have you. Surveys, doing surveys online to get public feedback. Those typically go over real well as far as providing needed information. Social media and email blast. This is something I implemented a few years ago that helps the public keep up with what's going on. Capital project management capital project plan. One of the things here that I think that it was mentioned, and I truly agree, that the city manager's role is to prepare and submit to the city commission a recommended CIP and work with the capital project management staff into doing so. Key factors in doing this is to define a project portfolio, organize the portfolio in an official capital improvement plan, and share the plan with internal and external stakeholders. So that way there's no guessing and there's no unknowns out there as far as what's going on in the public. High quality infrastructure is essential to a community's economic vitality and quality of life. That is one of the big parts of all this, is to include that into the economic vitality and quality of life. Each capital project requires a financial plan to include the project cost, the operating and renewal cost, and also funding and financing sources. And following through with that plan, carry on the implementation of the commission directives in the 2020 strategic plan, assess periodically and approve upon the development of the city's 5-year CIP, feasibility and conditional studies when necessary. As you're going through your facilities and your infrastructure and analyzing those, make sure that your assessments are done on a timely basis, so that way if priorities change or conditions change, you're able to adapt. And then last but not least is the grant writing and administration involved in that. Coastal community issues. This is, as far as sustainability, basically seeks to balance ecological preservation and human activities through development. In ensuring that coastal and marine resources are used to wisely benefit the present and future generations. Key concepts there: a disaster resilient community, and one which the significant steps and actions have been taken to reduce the community's vulnerability and to potential hazard events with climate change. And the second is to work as a team with Volusia County on flooding issues as much as possible. And I think that's very important, to develop a relationship with the county because sometimes people forget that the city is inside the county, and I think that's an important issue. And also extremely important, your hurricane preparedness plan and your evacuation plan. Land use tools to achieve coastal resilience, smart growth, comprehensive planning, and your LDC. Land use techniques for building codes, buffers, setbacks, conservation easements, and such. Your floodplain management, your shoreline stabilization, whether that be natural, like sea oats, or hard structures, riprap. And beach renourishment plan is a big key there. I know that's all county, but it's part of the shoreline protection. Encourage low impact density lids. Those are to manage stormwater using natural resources and such, natural features. Sediment and erosion control is a big key. Stormwater management ordinance and your hydrology studies when in doubt. That's one of the things we've always stressed from where I'm at locally, is because we have a county, the whole county floods, and I've mentioned this quite a bit. And when it does, it floods pretty much everything in the county and in the cities. Strategic planning. The main topics to the 2020 strategic plan: communication and trust, quality of life measures, growth management, environmental and resiliency, and transportation and circulation. City manager is charged to implement the plan, educating the others on best to provide updates and managing the overall implementation of the plan. The plan should be a top-down, bottom-up, community-led approach. And another one there is the plan should be a high-functioning and forward-thinking plan, meaning that it's always on the edge. It's always on the cutting edge and thinking well into the future. A high-functioning strategic plan does not have a finish line. It's continuous improvement. The continuous improvement will motivate staff. As staff sees that the plan is being implemented, things are getting done, things are getting fixed and improved, as whatever those needs are, that does motivate. It motivates me, for sure. Also, too, the plan should always adapt to new situations and needs. Accountability and ongoing support of the plan are necessary for long-term success. Those are extremely important, that there's accountability and ongoing support. Last but not least, the city staff role is to make the plan come to life. And that's the goal and also the charge. Deering Park Innovation Center. I put a quote there at the top, which I thought was kind of neat. I watched one of the meetings where the mayor said that the new town for New Smyrna. I thought that was kind of neat. The goal there, established an industrial park for New Smyrna Beach, west of I-95. Why? Basically because the tax burden is primarily on residential properties. The city does not have adequate sites to market or develop for industrial recruitment. And the last part, number 3, the budget does not have sufficient funds to do such. The benefits of that part, diversification of the tax base to minimize the millage rate. There's a private developer that is funding the project. It's an excellent location, highly visible from I-95. Job creation is a big thing. More and better paying wages. Direct and indirect benefit is business development, as we call it in business, spinoffs. You're going to have more development that occur around that park in all types, shapes, and sizes. And so that's going to be even more growth on top of that park, beyond just the park and what's adjacent to it. There's also going to be a community center, recreational area, complex, law enforcement substation, easily accessible from I-95 and State Road 44, utility revenue increase from electric, water, sewer, and reuse. And on top of that, one of the biggest benefits is you get more land for preservation. Preservation is the key. Now, from my standpoint and my experience, there's 2 things there that come to mind when that's being planned, as it mentions there. Stormwater runoff and traffic impact. I've mentioned already that traffic is big. Stormwater is another one. I don't know enough about it to find out if the streets that are going to be in that park are going to be deeded to the city, if they're going to be city streets or private streets. And also, too, keep in mind, as development occurs, you're going to have a lot of earthwork going on in that park, and you're going to have a lot of material coming out on the streets if they're paved at the time. And so all the drainage systems are going to have to be maintained constantly. Succession planning is the other one that I looked at. There you have to identify positions in need of successor, develop a profile of each position and its performance expectation requirements, determine which positions are well suited to transition into the successor position if necessary, and nominate successors on the qualified positions. Create a plan for developing potential successors' abilities, skills, knowledge, and prepare them for the role. And you can do that through cross-training and job shadowing. Allow employees to be involved in team projects when possible for experience. Make sure that you're encouraging and stressing training and education for the ones that have the will and an ability. and then recognize employees for demonstrating excellence and obtaining certifications. Oop, excuse me, I'm sorry. Now, this last slide wasn't part of the profile there, but these are things that, from my experience in things that I'm dealing with now and also in the past, other challenges that involve local government, and these are big ones: ransomware hacks and malware hacks. Where I'm from, we've had a local government, the whole local government county was hacked and all their data was encrypted. So that's a big deal nowadays. Aging infrastructure, economic decline, inflation, increasing costs in construction and materials cost, the paper-based workflow, meaning that everyone is still dealing with paper and not so much electronic documents, especially when you have issues like COVID that occur. You know, you have to work from home sometimes. One of the other biggest is the lost in government institutions. And I mentioned there in the parentheses, First Amendment auditors. That's becoming a big issue nowadays. Human capital, low recruitment, and employee retention, primarily because of competitors in the public side and the private side, from pay, wages, and such. The availability of affordable housing is a big issue, along with the homeless, and last but not least is unfunded mandates. And from that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Scott, is there any questions for any panelist about this PowerPoint? Yes, Commissioner McGirt.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome. You know, you brought up, talking about Innovation Park, a little interesting detail about public or private streets. What is, or do you have an opinion on whether or not the city is going to benefit from that being a development like that being a public street or private street, or in a sense that the streets are going to be taken care of or controlled by the end of the development?
My experience is normally it bids well for those to be public streets, for those, the right-of-ways and the streets themselves, to be deeded over to the city. The reason why is because no matter what happens, whoever owns that, whether it's private or not, they're still going to call the city if there's drainage problems, or if those boxes or cross drains or linear drains, pipes need to be cleaned. They're going to call the city. So it's going to become an issue for the city, and the city can't control it because they're dealing with the private company or person who's the contact. And I've got that now, and I've had that in the past. But it works out better when those streets become the cities. And if there's ever any issue, the city can have the wherewithal to get it addressed and get it fixed.
Thank you for that information.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Scott. Feel free to stand there or sit, whatever you're comfortable with. We've got a series of questions to go through, and we'll start with our Vice Mayor, Commissioner Perrine.
Okay.
Hi, Scott. Thank you.
Sure.
My first question is, how and when in your past city management have you used city benchmarking comparisons for your city against other cities for things like staffing, revenues, expenses, leisure services, and head counts, or any type of those tools that you've used that and then presented those to the commission or to staff and helped with your strategic plan?
You know, first and foremost, I haven't done it lately in the last few years, but I have in the past used management reports that are based on the data collected on a statewide platform, and those data benchmarks, statistics, and so forth are provided to see what averages are out there, all types of data as far as you know, typically what costs are running, what folks are paying as far as pay classification plans, to look at the salary surveys and those types of things. And more or less what I do is I don't look statewide. I typically look for data that's based on the size of the budget, the number of employees, and population. And typically that will show me pretty much where we are as far as those benchmarks and comparing for other communities and where we should be.
Thank you. How do you hold staff to objectives and KPIs when raises aren't tied to performance?
That's a good question. I would say that typically you've got to provide some sort of incentives, and some of the ways I've done it is to recognize employees to encourage and motivate with public recognition. It could be during meetings, it could be just from the standpoint of providing recognition letters or any sort of certificate and those kind of things. But a lot of times the money's not there to do that. But also recognize employees of the month, ones of the quarter, maybe of the year, and those kind of things.
Thank you. Number 3 is an economic development question. You've heard that we've had an out-of-balance budget ratio burden on our residential property tax payers, and that's been a big problem for our community for years. Our ratios are about 85-15, and the balance should be more like 60-40. Tell me how you've handled a situation that's similar to that and balance between the proper growth and better job opportunities for your community versus a no-growth approach?
My experience has been, and I've faced this when I was, or seen it when I was with Fernandina Beach, they had very little industrial base. And I think it was one of the initiatives and the programs to expand from the Industrial Development Authority to get more, how's the best way to say this, more active in recruitment, not only recruitment, but expansion. And look for opportunities where businesses can expand, local in-place business can expand, and try to push it from that standpoint. But the mindset's got to go, because the residential growth is going to continue unless it totally gets built out inside the city. But that's not going to stop. You don't have to worry about that. You manage that growth as best as you can with the tools you have and the resources. But there has to be a whole nother mindset and drive, if you will, from the industrial development side, just to start gaining ground on that percentage split. I think it was 83 something from what I saw in statistics, but that's wild. But that's been my experience, is that there has to be a total commitment from the sales team, and I call it a sales team, from the Industrial Development Authority, or that resource, and also the chamber to push for those things.
Were you successful in moving that needle to get a better split in Fernandina Beach?
I'm sorry?
Were you successful in moving that needle to?
Well, like I said, it was kind of outside of the city and the resources the city had. That it was basically another organization, but we supplied the infrastructure. And in some cases, not all cases, some of those cases were, for instance, let's say you had a company, a prospect that was provided by the state Economic Development Department, and they were looking for a site, and you're in competition with another community. It could be in another state, wherever it may be, but the city had to step up somehow or another to secure the resources for the infrastructure, street extensions or widening or water, sewer, those kind of things. And those primarily were funded by the state as far as grants were concerned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my last question for you is, you've had an opportunity to meet with each of us and as well as our citizens and staff. What advice or concerns do you have for our city improvements? And if you want to prioritize those, that's fine. If not, you can be general.
City improvements. I would say the first one that comes to mind, and I may be off base here, first one that comes to mind is parking. Because I just left from Beachside.
No problem over there.
And that was interesting. And I was kind of nervous about driving down the street. I was afraid I was going to hit someone or hit a vehicle. I mean, that's you start thinking this needs some attention. Overall, but that's not just today. That's been other days. So the parking issue is probably one that somehow or another that's going to need to be. I know here again, because it being a beach community or coastal community in Fernandina Beach, we had the same thing. We had to look for off-street parking, and I think I mentioned that in the slideshow, that you've got to locate off-street parking. Now, there's times, and I heard it last night, I think, that sometimes with off-street parking, people don't like to use that. They like to park right in front of the door where they need to walk in. And so you have to encourage your owners and your employees to park off-site and leave those openings for the visitors and the customers. But that was the push there, as we had to locate a few lots that we were able to acquire and develop all-street parking and make sure you have the directional signage in place that, because tourists and visitors come into town, they won't know. So that helps to do that sort of thing.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Scott. Commissioner Martin.
Hi. Thanks for being here, Scott. First question, your approach to budgeting. Where do you start? What's your ground zero?
My ground zero is to meet with the commission, usually through a planning retreat, workshop, vision retreat is what sometimes I'll call it, just to get information from the commission from a consensus basis on what's important, what goals, what objectives need to be reached just during that fiscal year. And then take that information, bring it back to staff, present it to staff, we talk about it, and we try to formulate, because it's a grassroots, it's from the bottom up. Take that, bring that back to the commission on how the staff believes that they can accomplish what the commission wants to accomplish.
Do you find that 1 year is too short to accomplish these goals? I'm wondering about sort of a rolling budget.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Typically, a lot of those things do have to carry over into the next year. And if that's the case, then you have to set more or less the benchmarks there, the thresholds on what you could and possibly could get done during that next fiscal year, and then outline what needs to be done over the second or third or fourth year. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We've talked a lot about the property tax split, but property tax represents 27% of our total budget. What innovative or creative ways do you have to get additional funds for our programs and infrastructure and other needs?
I would say right offhand is the grant administration and writing is one of the biggest things. Mm-hmm. I think in some cases when you have budget constraints, as some folks do in their personal finances, you got to figure out how to not spend all that you bring in, and you've got to create what I refer to as a forced savings, and you've got to look to become more efficient and economical in your spending year to year, so you add to your fund balance, and then when you go back to create your new budget, then you can set aside a portion of your fund balance that you saved and use that to help supplement and fund certain projects.
So we just have to find ways to increase those funds, don't we?
That's right, basically. Yes,
ma'am. Whoops, sorry, I'm almost there. We have our nice little, okay, so describe a time, I'm sorry, please describe your understanding of the unique dynamics of our community and organization. What's unique about our community and our government?
Unique. I would say that the uniqueness is the size of the population size of the city. For as a coastal, the geographic size is something that I thought was not, well, I'd say it's unique. It's large. It's large
The
as far as
41
the geographic size.
Okay.
I didn't look to see how many square miles, but that was one of the
41.7.
41? Oh, okay.
0.7.
0.7, okay. And that was somewhat unique to me. I mean, I was expecting it to be somewhat larger as far as geographical size, that kind of thing. The other part of that is I thought that the uniqueness was, or is, the three parts of the city. And I say parts. You've got the beach side, you got the Old Town part, and then you come over and it changes into something else. And I thought that was very unique. It was very interesting. I don't know if I've ever seen that anywhere else. So that would be probably the largest thing. And also, too, from a organizational standpoint, I would say that you have new commissioners and you have fairly new staff. And that's usually it's one or the other, but both, that's a little different. So I would say that.
Thank you. Could you describe a time when you were met with strong resistance to a change that you implemented, and how did you overcome that resistance?
I think that would be when I changed the operation hours for our public works, your maintenance, like your maintenance department division here, changed their working hours to a 4-day work week, 4 10-hour days. And that change caused a problem with the staff.
Okay.
Because, they were used to just working 8 hours a day, but we found out, studies have shown, and it comes from some of the stuff that I mentioned earlier, some of the studies have shown that 4 10-hour days, typically you're more productive because you don't have so much back and to, coming in, coming back, going to lunch and moving equipment, trying to get back in time so they can stay on the job sites, get them done. And it's also a big motivator for employees, because employees love to have 3-day weekends. But what you would think that would be the motivator, but it was just changing the
So did
structure.
you stay with the 4 10-hour days, or did you move back?
I stayed with those, yeah, because studies have shown that from a local government standpoint, with that type of work and department, it's much more beneficial.
Thank
Could
you.
you say some more, Scott, about how you overcame that? How did you get them to buy in?
I basically, I've stressed the point of them having a 3-day weekend. But also, too, when you have employees, when they were pushing back against it, it took some convincing. First and foremost, they'd never done it before. And so when you implement it, I basically said, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's try it for a month and see how it goes. And I knew they would fall in line. They would like it once they tried it. And the first week, it was shaky. And then from there, it got better. And I think after about a month, it was a lot better.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And then they started saying, hey, this is much better than we thought. We like it. Primarily when they knew on Fridays they were off. So.
Hey, can you give us an example of a time when you faced obstacles that kept you from meeting a goal, and what did you do about it?
One that I could say that comes to mind pretty quickly would be DOT, Georgia DOT, where I'm at now. We have and has been in the plans for a number of years. I know probably at least 15, 18 years to build a grade separation on US 1 State Highway coming through town, and to cross over, and I've mentioned to you already about the issues we have with railroad and train activity in my county. So we wanted to get that done and get it off the ground, but it was going to be about a $50 million project. Well, at the time when it was on the books to be done, when I started 8 years ago, it has never gone anywhere. And I made it a priority to figure out how to get that off the ground and get it moving. And there was two things that I did that, for whatever reason, we were just getting pushback. And there's a backstory to all this, but I don't want to go into it. I can if you'd like. But we didn't have a really good relationship with DOT at the time, because we turned down a project of $70 million, the community did, the city and the county together, turned down a $70 million for a bypass road, about 7 miles of bypass. Well, they turned it down because it was going through an influential area. That ruined our relationship with the state. So when I wanted that new project to get off the ground, I took it upon myself, and everyone's saying don't try it because DOT's just going to lock the door and laugh, make you leave. So I took it upon myself to go to Atlanta and meet with the DOT planning director, who basically holds the checkbook to all state projects, and met with this gentleman. And the whole time I'm thinking I'm going to get shot down. Everybody's going to tell me this is not going to work. Even the community says, you're wasting your time. Even some of the commissioners did. And I said, well, it's not going to hurt, You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So anyway, I showed up and went and convinced them to begin the preliminary design. $500,000 to do that design, and that started the process. And then the other part of that was they said, well, we'll get the preliminary design done, but we don't have the money to get started. And so it may be a few more years, and I thought, well, I'm not going to accept that. So I told them, I said, I'll come up with some idea. So at that time, we had a special purpose local option sales tax referendum on the horizon. And I say persuaded, educated, informed the commission. The best thing for us to do is set aside money in that referendum to use as seed money in that project to get that grade separation project off the ground and get it moving. And totally pass the preliminary part. And so hopefully this time next year, they will let that project and it will get off the ground. But I ran in some pushback from various sources with DOT, state representative, state delegation, saying, we got a bad relationship with DOT. Don't talk to them right now. But I just wouldn't take no for an answer and kept pushing.
Thank you. How do you facilitate open and transparent communication with the governing body, staff, boards and commissions, residents, and other stakeholders? You got a big audience.
Oh, yeah. Constant and open communication is pretty much the way I see the whole thing is to make myself available and to look for opportunities to engage with everyone. Typically with the commission, I sometimes do that on a daily basis with emails, and also from communicate with the commission. And I think I mentioned this yesterday to somebody. I do weekly reports from staff reports. Publish those. They're available as a public document, and I send it out to the commission by email and make hard copies if I need to and supply those with the commission. But from the overall is I look for avenues and media sources where I can keep that lines of communication open at all times with the public as much as I possibly can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner McGurk.
If I can just point out, I did get a chance to jump in. We're about 45 minutes into the process. So,
Thank you, sir.
okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Tell us about a time you had to inspire or energize an unmotivated employee or part of your organization. How'd you deal with that? What was the result?
I think the one I can think of right offhand happened to be no longer an employee, but became a really good friend afterward, was a situation where I had an employee who was dealing with some mental health issues and had some things in their past that kind of held them back from a motivational standpoint. They just did not seem to have the wherewithal to keep moving forward. Was making so many mistakes, didn't care, and I basically asked to see this person, and it wasn't one of my direct reports, but it was one of the employees that I thought that maybe I could, along with someone else, sit down and talk with this person and motivate this person to move forward. And actually, this person was really one of my students when I taught, and I more or less convinced this person that that they had a family or some children that was dependent upon them, and they didn't care. I mean, they were really low as far as their emotional and mental state. And I brought them in and just basically told them about, mentioned what their past history was with some of the evaluations that were there, and asked them if there was anything I could do as far as changing some of their work environments or things of that nature. Now, what I did to help resolve all of that and didn't realize it was they were burnt out. They didn't want to do their job anymore. And so I looked for opportunities to keep this employee because I knew he was a great employee back before things started going south, and provided some counseling, but also looked for opportunities to have that employee transferred to another department. And soon thereafter, it was like a whole nother person. But that was one of the ones where I felt like there was a lot of potential there, and someone that was very knowledgeable, institutional knowledge, and I thought that was a good thing to try to do to keep that employee.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell me what integrity and ethics means to you, and can you tell me about a time where your integrity and or your ethics were challenged, how you dealt with it?
Integrity, I would say that is who the person really is as far as their character and reputation, from the standpoint of how others may view them. The ethics part of that, I think, is more or less the moral state, the moral background of someone as far as having strong ethics is more or less, I guess, who people see that you are, and are you genuine, your character, basically. I know that one of the things that I'm mentioned quite a few times is from an ethics standpoint. I had a situation where I knew an employee at one time was embezzling money, and this person was somewhat related to me, and it really bothered me to the point where I had to confront this person and then turn it over to law enforcement. But there was that ethics part of that for me was, from a professional standpoint, it's about the organization and not about me personally or that person. And that was rough because of the situation and what was taken, it had to be turned over to the district attorney. And it wasn't where I could just terminate the employee and let them walk. And so that was tough on my part, very tough, still today.
Thank you for sharing that. Tell us about steps you have taken to get a capital project back on track when it was at risk for not being completed on time. Do you have a specific example?
Yes, sir. When I first started with Ware County back in 16, we had a project. It was about, I think total project cost was about $6.2 million. It was a road or street widening from a 3-lane to a 5-lane, roughly 3/4 of a mile long in our huge development areas, retail and commercial development area that was needed. It basically connected 2 state highways. Well, that was a project, I started in 16 with Ware County. That project was on the radar in 2002, and it came to a halt around 2014, only because the right-of-way that was needed to widen the road was pushed to the side. Because you had the required right-of-way that was needed, the property owners pushed back against that and kind of stood their ground on the appraisals and what those costs would be. And some of the staff, because they were getting beat up over it, just kind of backed away from it and stopped. And when I started, I had a couple of commissioners, quite a few folks in the public who were business owners in this area. The traffic was horrendous. It was awful. And they came to me and said, we got to figure out how to make this happen. And not only that, there was $3.3 million of federal funds that was tied into that project. And if we didn't get it off the ground and going, I believe it was in this like 6 or 8 months, the feds were going to pull that money back and put them on other projects. And so I took it upon myself to move forward with the right-of-way acquisition, working with the utilities at the same time, and got it up and moving. Had to get the environmental study updated because, you know, they only last a couple of years. And so had that redone quickly and pushed it from that standpoint and turned it back over to DOT because we were funding it, but they were managing it, and turned it over to them and got it off the ground and got it done. And it took 20 years just to widen the road, but that was probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, I've ever been involved in, to try to play catch up to keep from losing funding.
Good. Tell me about a time you may have had to tactfully confront someone about inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate behavior is a little flexible in terms of it just doesn't, in my mind, defer to one specific kind of action.
Okay. It's happened quite a bit. I had a department head who was disgruntled about an evaluation, and it was one that where the department head, when it came to the city commission to meet, he had a presentation of some sort, and basically started basically to say bashing certain ones in the community, not by name, but everyone knew, and that was tough because I thought I had a good relationship with this department head, but that behavior and what he was portraying didn't fit him, and I just didn't think it was right that he went in and started acting like this when it was totally unseasonable. So that was one of the ones I can think of right away, but also too, you know, kind of mention another one also had too that was inappropriate for the way this person was talking to other employees and treating other employees, and basically just fired a shot over the bow and basically told him either you're going to have to stop this behavior or we'll have to take action. And that was just recently. That was like a month or two ago.
So how did that end, at least the first one? Maybe the second one is still kind of developing, but how, once you spoke to him, how did that, what was the end result?
It stopped because I basically, gave him an ultimatum. Either this stops or we take action. And it was just verbal things. It wasn't from a sexual standpoint. It was just how people were how he was talking to other people. And from what we found out was folks in the community too. It was just the attitude and just not being the person he should be in the role that he had. And but it stopped. I basically said, either you stop or I'll have to fix it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Mr. Hartman.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What was the biggest mistake you've made in your work? What did you do about it, and what did you learn from that event?
The biggest mistake I made. Hired the wrong person or persons. There's good hires and there's bad hires. And when you make the bad hires, that hurts because it ripples through the whole organization. And you have staff members and commissioners that know that this person was a bad hire. And I did that actually twice. And I know that's going to sound awful, but it's, and I'll say this, it's one of those things where when you go to recruit, depends on what your pay ranges are. Sometimes you don't get the best of the ones. And you have to settle. And sometimes when you have to settle, it shows. And this was 2 occasions where this happened. And good people, they just weren't competent. And I thought they would be. I was one of those ones where I thought, hey, I can make this work. I can make this work. And I convinced others I can make this work. Well, it didn't work. And so that was probably the hardest. That's the hardest thing to get over because it shows and other people realize it and see it and go, well, he didn't make a good decision on that one. And that's part of, part of the staff. And those things, you're always mindful. After those things occur, you're always real careful about the recruitment part and who you pick to fill certain positions.
How did that resolve?
Both of these folks left on their own.
Okay.
It usually will come to that in most cases. I mean, there was a couple of evaluations and some things there, but one of them knew right away this is not going to work. They were smart enough to realize that. It comes to the top. It comes to a head,
Yes.
and it gets picked up pretty easy.
What is your greatest personal struggle or limitation in supervising others? Give us an example of a time when you overcame one of your limitations to resolve a problem.
Limitations and can you repeat that one more time, please? I'm just processing.
What is your greatest personal struggle or limitation in supervising others? And then can you give us an example of a time when you overcame that limitation to resolve the problem?
Okay. I have a very competitive nature. And I have a sense of urgency about pretty much everything that I do, especially when I'm at work. That limitation or weakness, if you want to call it, sometimes that on occasion, depending on what it is, if I feel the heat, then I sometimes will push. And I think sometimes, and I'm better now. This was when I was a little younger, but and I knew that sometimes people are different from me, And it was one of those things where I had to realize that, I can encourage and support and motivate folks to move and get things done and get them accomplished. And I realized that I had to sometimes back off to the point to where folks didn't feel like they were being pressured. And that took a while, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that you can't always be that way when you're supervising others, that you have to, work with them and find out, and I mentioned this yesterday to a few folks, you got to know how to work with folks that you may have a different demeanor and personality from yourself.
What do you consider to be New Smyrna Beach's single biggest asset in attracting new business and industry?
Location. Primarily because of, well, you really got two. You got US 1, and I know there's some issues that need to be addressed there, but 95, the accessibility off of 95, and the visibility, I think. You've got a very vibrant community. The folks here are. Just yesterday and last night, I met a lot of them, and I think that has a lot to do. There's a desire to be better, not bigger sometimes, but be better, do things better. But overall, I think the location would be the thing, and there's a desire to build that aspect of the economy.
Mayor?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate those questions, Commissioner Hartman. Scott, as our city manager, you'd be responsible for juggling numerous projects and initiatives simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Tell us about how you have managed, and you would manage multiple projects and communicating the progress updates of all the appropriate people and setting the specific procedures that you would use to keep everyone abreast of the progress.
Okay. I normally keep and I have kept a project board with the various projects where I can see it in front of me. It's one of those things I don't want to keep it in a folder. I want to be able to so I can see it on the wall. So every day, almost every minute that I'm working, I see it, and I track things from that standpoint. But also, as mentioned earlier, whatever those projects are, I meet at least every other week, if not every week, with the staff for the various projects to make sure things are staying up to date and staying on time, and then put that in a project report, a schematic, if you will, publish it. I have published them in the newspaper for the public to see, because sometimes I found that I get a good bit of questions from them when they send them in the newspaper, but also distribute them, email, send it out to the commission that way, make it available on the website or Facebook or something of that nature. Yes, sir.
Appreciate that. Excuse me, appreciate that. Thank you. Could you tell us how you have or would help a divided governing body achieve consensus on some politically charged issues?
I typically, usually, meet with each person individually to find out what their concern is or concerns, and find out for myself individually where there may be common ground, where there's common denominator, and then work from there to find out. And then also too, if you've got some split there, then look to see how there could be to try to formulate some sort of compromise. And it seems like I do a fairly good job at doing that, just from the standpoint of trying to get things accomplished and move things forward. Sometimes there's always give and take. I'll give on this, but over here, just don't forget I helped on that, and you got to help me over here, and you try to balance those dynamics as best as possible.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. So, how do you effectively handle having so many bosses who may sometimes have differing goals and agendas? How do you do that?
It's an art, as I like to tell folks. I would say that typically what I do is I do my best to implement or accomplish individual agendas, if you want to call it that. And I work to see how I can, and it's, like I said, it goes back to being an art, but still I look to see what it is someone is trying to get to, or maybe some outcome, and try to figure out how to do that. I keep track of those things, and I have staff to help me to do that, only from the standpoint of providing updates. Now, when it comes to a decision that needs or should have commission decisions as far as votes, whatever that is, I bring that back to the commission, only for them to act on and for everyone to know. That has bit me a few times when I didn't do that. And so I learned early on that was the best way to do it. When there's an issue out there that requires financial support, maybe something that I might, from a professional standpoint, we don't need to be involved in or shouldn't be involved in, I always bring it back to commission to get the official decision and work from there. But typically, the smaller issues, and I won't go into all what I mean by that, but smaller things, I typically try to address all those needs and concerns as best I can.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I think that are there follow-ups?
I have one.
Vice Mayor.
Scott, this is a lot of demands and juggling. How do you balance your time, and what is your availability to us and citizens and staff?
Availability as far as any and every time? I mean, as far as work?
Just in general, how do you do your work schedule now? Are you 8 to 5? Are you weekend guy? What's
Okay,
your
I'm with-
availability?
Yeah. And I tell my commission, I have told my past commissions and places I've been, I work 24/7. And what I mean by that is I don't work 24/7, but I make myself available. And I tell my commission that I always have my phone. It could be in the middle of the night, on weekends, whatever the case may be. Only because there's sometimes when I would rather know right away if there's something that's an issue or a problem, but I always make myself available. And it does not bother me to answer the phone or a text or an email. But I always try to stay open and available to the commission and to the public. I was always mentioning in my PowerPoint that when I'm out and about, and if it's on the weekend and I'm out having dinner or something of that nature, if somebody's got a question or an issue, I'll listen to them. You know, I don't think that's good public image to go, well, I'm not working right now. I'm not at all, not this job. I've never felt that way, that I'm always available no matter where I'm at. And it doesn't bother me a bit to answer the phone or make myself available.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner McGurk.
Scott, you did a little bit of time in Florida at Fernandina Beach. You may have experienced sunshine laws there during that time. How do you feel about your understanding of sunshine and whether or not it's going to, what kind of learning curve do you think you're going to have with that?
Not much of a curve. We deal with that in the state of Georgia too, to the point to where everything is noticed. No quorum can meet in public. Issues that are being addressed as far as emails and those kind of things. No polling the commissioners, all those sort of issues. Everything is, if it's public record, it's public record. But as far as sunshine laws, everything, you know, from that basis has always got to be, I know, in the public. and with notice meetings and such, so.
So
they don't bother
Georgia
me.
has a similar,
Very similar, very similar, almost basically the same.
thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Scott, thank you for enduring our questions. Thank you for your candid remarks. We appreciate you being here. We're going to give you a chance to have some closing remarks, but before that, what we thought we'd do is give you an opportunity to ask us some questions. And
Okay.
Is there anything on your mind about something in the city or something about us, something about our governance that you'd like to inquire about?
Sure. I had a list. I don't even know if I brought it with me. I worked on it some this morning. As far as the transition with the current city manager, what would be, and I mentioned this, but I'd like to hear from as a group, and I addressed some of this in my paper that I did for the recruitment process, but what do you all see that I would need to focus on as soon as I walk in the door?
Commissioner McGirt.
Yes, Mayor, ready to go. You know, it's funny, that was my question to you, but I'm glad you turned it around. It's very interesting. The number one thing is probably getting to know your commission. It's going to be finding out where we stand, the different personalities, the different goals.
Right.
And then you're going to need to do the same thing with the community. It's not an easy question to answer, but I think that before you can truly start accomplishing things, you need to make sure you've got a team, that everybody, at least we understand each other and what your goals and priorities are going to be and what ours are.
Right, right.
And then we've got some hot button issues. When you come in, you're going to have to hit the ground running.
Correct.
Which is some of the water issues, the water problem in Venetian Bay, and understanding the true dynamic of when we say water issues, what does that mean? Because Ian created a truly unique event that's a water issue. But there are water issues that have nothing to do with Ian specifically, that are more, not necessarily, that are more long-term.
Right.
They're both long-term, but there's understanding the difference between water issues and then the water issues that Ian created, being a 500 approximate 1,000-year storm event.
Right.
Commissioner Martin.
I believe we need to get our house in order, so that to me is our first, and of course to get involved with the community and let them know that you're here and you're working for them,
Yeah,
because they
okay.
pay your salary.
Commissioner Hartman.
I think your biggest challenge is going to be patience. Not only your patience, but our patience.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, we had a city manager for 8 years. Colin's been here over 30. That's a transition period that we're all going to go through. So that's something that you're going to have to give us time on.
Sure.
And we're going to have to give you the same amount of time and leeway so that you
Yep.
can do the best job that you can do.
Sure.
So that we're all on the same team and productive as soon as we can get there.
Yeah. And I think so too, as far as the institutional knowledge, with him retiring, with him with all that background and such, you know, that's a big benefit, you know, with him retiring. And there may be times when I would need to lean on that to learn kind of where things are from his standpoint, you know, and what he has to be aware of too. So, but I was wanting to find out, because I've sensed that same thing too, that patience, I know exactly what you mean. And going back to what you were saying is, I know that the very first thing is to get to know and love the commission. I don't, you know, say it in that force. But
You don't have to love us.
I know, yeah. Well, I would, but no, I know but seriously, get to know who you are and know, as I mentioned before, is to know what your goals are and what you see and what your visions are individually, and what things that you think need to be addressed individually and as a group too. I think that's important to know, because it makes me more aware and have insight when things move from day to day to day to day, and I could see things potentially where hopefully I can address those needs as time moves forward. And I used to tell well, I still do. I tell my commission this, not from a jokingly sort of aspect, but also being serious. My goal is to make the commission look good. And I've always tried to hold that as a premise to say, listen, that's what I'm here to do. Whatever that may be, to do what we can, however much we can, with the community to make it a much better place and to improve the quality of life for the folks who live here. And that goes from the very youngest to the very oldest.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor.
I'm going to go a little different direction with this. I think my priority is for you to develop a relationship with staff and utilize your leadership skills, because we have a lot of new directors, and you're going to be stepping in possibly during budget season with the new finance director. So I am a fact detail kind of person. Try to take emotions out of things. We might not agree on things, but if you provide facts and details, I look at it and I move on. And I think a lot of us on the board, we don't really have expectations. 3 of us are new, so we're not really used to call it because we're new, or we've been here a year and a half. So you're not going to have to appease us as much as provide details, facts. I'm a numbers person. I want to see why it makes sense for me. And if not, I push things back all the time. I want to see details. So, and I don't understand when that's not a part of everyone, including staff.
Right.
Like, staff shouldn't submit anything to you unless it's very detailed oriented, ready for us. And that's why I want you to make a very good relationship with the staff that's not doing that, or if they could improve, or what are the issues. Dig into their performance reviews, see their strengths and weaknesses, build them up and retain them, so that we don't have turnover anymore, or at least improved turnover. Process improvement's huge for me. I don't want to just hire head count every single time we don't have the budget for it. I want to utilize ways that we are not beneficial in some areas, using a person, making sure that we have the appropriate staff and that their job objectives are in alignment and working for our city, because it's not always, in my opinion, the smart thing just to hire. Maybe we should change that job description and utilize those people, utilize what we have.
Right.
We're a growing community, but we don't have the funds just to give a brand new head count to every department that needs it. So we have to have some creativity there.
Yeah. Right sizing goes into that too.
Perfect word.
Yeah, right sizing.
All great points. I could add just to one, perhaps, having the situational awareness to find out what your trade space is. And your turning diameter with the staff. You've got a great group of directs who are anxious about this selection. And
sure.
they're as closer than we are to it.
Yeah.
The public, what your trade space is with the public, how much they'll tolerate, what they're looking for, what their first impressions of you are, and when they've decided you're their guy or you're not their guy.
Right.
And how long you can go. What China you can break easily, and what you have to work on for the vision of the future.
Yeah.
We handle the here and now pretty well around here. We don't want the community to blow up. We punch above our weight class. We're a small town. We punch above our weight class. And many would like to be like New Smyrna, but they've already gone the genie's out of the bottle.
Uh-huh,
They're big.
yeah,
We want to keep our coastal
Yep.
climate, our coastal community feel. Our citizens are the secret sauce. They're engaged. They're going to talk to you.
Yeah.
They're going to get involved. They're going to push buttons. They're going to use all the leverage they can. How you handle that
yeah. It's gonna
right
be-
off the get-go will
Yeah.
determine your success as you go down the road.
Yeah.
And the secret right now is how you utilize an amazing staff to bring this stuff to life.
Right.
What other questions have you got for us?
As far as budgetary development process, has the command, and I should have found out about this earlier, but I thought I'd ask, have you all ever had a planning retreat, budget planning, vision retreat as a group? You haven't? Okay.
I'll help answer that. Not lately, not within the last few years.
Okay.
I think before COVID.
Oh,
And
okay.
COVID hit, and then it
then
hasn't.
everything stopped.
But
Okay.
yes, we used to have some retreats, and I will tell you that I found them beneficial. The most beneficial retreats are those that are, we reduce the political climate as much as possible. But we haven't had them since before COVID.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for your questions. Any closing remarks before we turn you loose?
Only that, just repeat what I mentioned earlier, as I appreciate the opportunity to be here and interview. And no matter how things come out, it's been good, and I've enjoyed it. I really have. And you won't get rid of me because I'm planning on coming back down and spending some time here anyway, even if it doesn't work out. So, but I love the community. I love the people. Last night, that was really great. I enjoyed that. A little tiring because it was a long day, but it was really good. And some of the things that you mentioned just now, I got a taste of that, some of that last night, not a lot, but I see that as my role, to in a sense be a sounding board, but also one that can, in a lot of cases, as I say, run interference from the standpoint of trying to pull all these needs and concerns together and see what we can do as a city to address those needs as best we can, or from that angle altogether. Yeah.
Mr. Moy, we appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming today. We appreciate your record, and
Appreciate it.
thank you for
Thank you.
bringing your lovely significant other here to have some time with us. And I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I know it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
We will get back to you as soon as we can. It may not be instantaneous, but we're going to deliberate. This is a big decision for us.
Yeah,
So
no, it is, and I wish you all the best. I really do. I mean, y'all are great, and I appreciate that time.
appreciate that. Thank you for your remarks, sir. Appreciate it. Let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll start our deliberations, please. Remarks, please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Remember, this is a monologue, not a dialogue, and we are anxious to hear what you have to say. When you come up, your name and address for the record, please. You'll see a green light come on. You'll have 3 minutes, 1 minute to go with the yellow light, and then you should be done when the red light comes on. Is there anyone for public participation? Dr. Herman.
Randy Herman, 108 Esther Street. Mr. Mayor, Commission, staff. I'm not quite sure how to speak because there was so much information today, and I'm sure you all are processing that as well. I was mindful of the song tradition in Fiddler on the Roof. I don't know if you remember when he had to make a major decision, and he was in the middle of a road, and he had to put the options on, and he said, on one hand, and then he'd go, and on the other hand, and he was having trouble. And I kept feeling this today as I was listening to all the candidates and the really the terrific level of presentation and questioning. I know this will be a difficult decision. I have to say, personally, I do find that one person seemed to bubble up, but part of me would like to take bits of each one and stir them together. Because each one, Kevin had a tremendous academic record and career. James had fabulous energy, and he's the only one that changed the PUDs and did amazing work on that. Robin was fairly straightforward and had practical skills. But Scott continued to impress me on almost every question he answered. He showed backbone in the face of very difficult situations. He showed initiative. He tackled very difficult staff problems. He has county and city experience, which I think is important as we face the future. And he struck me as quite honest. So I guess I'm showing my hand a little bit there, but I wish you all the best in making the best decision for our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else for public participation? Hello, Cindy.
Good afternoon. I have to congratulate you on your stamina. It's been hard to go through this. You never have that second glass of wine after dinner on a Friday night. Wow, I was really impressed with how you structured this and handled this. I thought your selection of questions was good. What struck me most about today is that you're the only people that hold all the information. You've had your one-on-one interviews. You probably got feedback from the staff because you wisely had the staff speak to the candidates, and were smart enough to know what they thought. You had your one-on-one. You had the cocktail situation yesterday. So not only did you probably ask questions, you listened to responses given to other people's questions, citizens and other commissioners. So I'm not in a position to advocate for anybody, and I wouldn't presume to do that. I only saw what I saw today. And I'm surprised that based on what I saw today, people that I had in a bottom position moved up. People that I would have had based on their paperwork and what I heard from the consultant, some of them moved down. So, some folks, based on their presentation ability, they tanked. Other folks, based on their answering questions, tanked. But I don't know how to line that up with what else you know about them based on the exchanges that you've had. So I'd ask you to consider a couple things. And they start with not making a decision today, just because of the tremendous flow of information coming at you. And I suspect that at least a few of you may have changed some opinions by what happened today. And you're going to have to line that up with what your opinion was coming into the long session today. The other is, I'd ask you to be open, and I know this is a hard one, I'd ask you to be open to considering whether or not this is a failed search. And I say that with an abundance of concern at the high risk, the high cost of a bad hire. In fact, the last presenter talked about that. It's easy to hire the best available, not the best. And if you in your heart don't feel that you've got a clear head and shoulders candidate, hopefully when you're discussing this and voting on it Tuesday, then that's a failed search and you have to really consider it. But I'd like to take the bits of two people and put them into one, but I can't do that, neither can you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate those remarks. Anyone else for public participation? We're anxious to hear what you have to say. Seeing none, public participation is now closed. So before I ask the protocol, Scott, we've got options, and you could give us the mathematical rack and stack of your experience of how we would go about a voting process, but perhaps there's some deliberation well before that we should just enjoy amongst each other and in view of the public to see which direction we are headed. And so, as I ramble on here, I'm hoping that each of my colleagues will have gathered at least some of their thoughts, and are prepared to share them, to include what your will is, what your personal desire is. I shared mine up front this morning. I haven't changed my mind about my personal desire about not rushing to judgment, and that may lie afoul of most of us, but that's where I was at the beginning, and I haven't yet been convinced otherwise. So with that said, as our protocol has been mostly, we'll ask the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Well, for one thing, when I started this process, I thought one person would clearly come out way ahead, and that did not happen for me. I think last night what will impress the citizens the most is how qualified the four candidates really were, and I got that feedback constantly. If I were to tell you the poll I personally did with citizens from everywhere, every zone, I would say that the most positive comments I got, if adding them up, was for Hayes, Slayton, and Cowper. From polling the staff, it was Cowper and Moy. So, that makes it hard on us, because I'm same sentiments as Dr. Herman. I would love to extract the best qualities out of each one and have the perfect one, and that's not going to happen. We have needs for this community, so I focused and structured my questions yesterday. They're the same questions I asked today. So one of my candidates yesterday that I interviewed and asked those very same questions didn't do as good of a job today, which was interesting to me. So that made me change my mind about that candidate. And so here we are. And I'm not going to lose sleep. I can tell you this, if my first choice doesn't get chosen unanimously, because I think you did a fabulous job giving us good quality candidates. Thank you for that. And for me, I can see advantages for each one. For Cowper, LDR, academic. For Slayton, process improvements, things that came out for me in the individual interview. He did great yesterday. He did better yesterday than today. And Six Sigma and things that are just really elaborated on process improvements and budgets and Hayes, she knocked it out of the park for me on benchmarking. She's not only using it currently, she's developed it. And that meant a lot for me because I'm a numbers person. No, it's not the only important thing, but yes, you need money for everything. So if we don't have funds, all of the quality of life isn't going to be paid for, and it can't happen. So I ranked her very high. So I was just, and yesterday, Moy for me, I didn't even have him in my top 3, and today he is. So I need to sleep on it, truthfully. I don't have a top candidate.
Okay, that was what I was going to ask you. As you sit here, you don't have one off the top. Okay. I'm grateful for your candor, and we do listen to you because of your technical skills and your bias. I like that, a bias for what you've said. So let's go down the line. Commissioner McGurk.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Valley was very accurate when you said not one person really set themselves above the other. I think we have 4 strong candidates that have impressed me, mostly impressed me today. And like you, in my head, they shuffled around a little bit today. The good news is the importance about the amount of time we have put into this has really allowed me to see them in a number of different ways. And I'm grateful for that. As to when we decide, it's interesting. My concern, I'm flexible. I can go 50-50 either way. Here are my general concerns. Waiting a few days to allow us to get input from the community is consistent with how we like to do things and engage our community. I like that. The problem with that is they may not like that. They may feel that we are uncommitted or unsure. They may remove themselves. They may drop out. I've been in a couple of these situations, and there were people who, as we wanted more information or weren't quite sure yet, people dropped out. So that has happened. So I wouldn't want to lose the confidence because all 4, at least in my mind, are all in the running. I would want to move very quickly on this. I don't want to underestimate the time it takes for us to start over again. It would be something that I would want to move quickly on. I mean, if I'm open Monday night, I don't have plans. Tuesday night, we have a meeting. We can get bogged down in a meeting. We would have to commit to a day and to move quickly, and that by the time you walk in, you're ready to just, it's not much of a discussion. It's just moving forward. If people feel they need more time to reach out into the community or time to think over the next day or two on who the best person is for the job. Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that, Commissioner Martin.
I've seen all the candidates now under a variety of circumstances, and yes, I valued that because my opinion did change from the paper through the presentations. I am in favor of moving forward. I think that, goodness knows, I have talked to a lot of constituents in the last 36 hours and staff and gotten a lot of feedback. And I believe our constituents expect us to be able to make a decision, move forward and act on it. I am also concerned that we may lose by not showing that we can be decisive. So I'd like to see us come together as a team, show these candidates that we can be decisive and move forward, and let's get started on negotiating the contract.
And have you got a first pick? Yeah.
I have a first and a second.
Good. All right. Commissioner Hartman.
So, Doug, I would have questioned this whole process at the very beginning, but as we went through the entire process, it got a little bit better. And I think at the end, how we got here was a good work. It worked well for us. I think it worked well for the candidates. Like everybody else, my candidates kind of shifted a little bit from before yesterday, and then again today. Sure. And it all shifts. And you kind of got to look at them also in what they're faced with. Some of them, this is the first time they've done this in 20 years. Some of them may have just come off a previous, engagement. So, you kind of take those kinds of things in consideration also. But I like Lisa, I think we knew what the process was going into this. We knew what the time restraints were going to be. To put it off, I think, is going to just be more of a problem because we had issues trying to find these 2 days together. I mean, all of us probably would have rather been someplace else on a Saturday. And so, but, we've committed to these were the 2 days that we were going to get the presentations, and then we were going to move forward. So, I don't see any sense in pushing it off. I've had written, I've had resumes, I've had one-on-ones, we've had a presentation, and like Lisa, I've reached out to a number of constituents, staff, and, I'm consistently getting the same name, 1 or 2 names. So, I'm certainly at 2, and could be at 1. But I think putting it off is just, I'm concerned at what that message sends to the candidates. And we know 2 of them are actively involved currently in another one that's coming up in a week probably. And they go, well, if they're going to hesitate on this, they're going to hesitate on everything else. And, so I think it speaks for us is that we've committed to this process. We've engaged in this process, and we need to see the process through in a timely fashion.
Thank you all. I may be the lone stranger and the East German judge in another vernacular, which usually sets the downside. This is the most important decision we'll be making. I take it seriously. I'm not afraid of making a decision or saying that there is no one that I trust to have the helm. The question in my mind, and so I'm not worried about what the constituency has to say about whether we take our time or not. If you've all heard enough from your constituency, that's good. Delighted to hear that. My question is about fatal flaws. And is there, your comments were, hey, if we could clone a couple together, boy, we'd really have something. So as I go through my top have changed based on a variety of inputs and a variety of things that I've witnessed and heard. Mr. Cowper is a career public servant, steady helm, quiet disposition. I don't want to say low energy, but I did not see any, I'm concerned about his ability to be embraced by our community from an action standpoint. Mr. Slayton had a bunch of great ideas and couldn't answer questions. He did not do the Q&A as well as I think he could have. But he had plenty of ideas. He has great science behind him and great ideas and great energy. Robin Hayes, although local, has been in a variety of jobs and has not had a steady job at any of one of these cities, and I don't know why. Mr. Moyer had trouble speaking in straight talk from the beginning, maybe nerves, maybe whatever, but his ability to address the public is a concern of mine. And so each of them have strengths for sure. Each of them have something that's big that's missing in my mind. And if this is the best that there is, I'm sad. I would have liked, there were 2 other candidates that we saw on the 45 list or the 55 list that we all kind of put up there at the top, and for one reason or another, one got picked and the other had a unfortunate video incident. And so now we have what we have left. And the next one was selected ahead. So we've actually had 3 of them yanked. So anyway, I'm I'm perplexed about making the biggest decision. Not afraid of going in and failing, and I know that's a costly decision to the city if we miss. But I just don't want to miss. So I'll be anxious to see how the ranking comes out, and if you decide to move forward, which is what I'm hearing from at least 3 of you, and then so be it. Scott, what's the? Doug, what's the?
Sure.
What's your idea for a protocol?
Okay, let's talk a little bit in the process. So in response to Commissioner Hartman's effort, we do try to put our candidates through a variety of different exercises for precisely the reasons that you all saw and you all commented on today, because you will see them react, and some will be stronger in one area and weaker in another area, and you don't know that till you put them through that exercise. So that dynamic that you've raised, where people have kind of shifted, they look strong on paper, they look good in the video interview, or they look better here, or they look better in the response, is something we typically see. With rare exception, it does happen, but with rare exception, do we see a candidate that gets selected as a finalist for all the processes to get to that point, that there's one candidate that always stays in that role the whole way through. Precisely because of the reasons I mentioned. We throw them at a lot of different curveballs and a lot of different scenarios, and you get to see them differently. So what you're experiencing is not all that atypical. I will tell you that from working with clients across the country. We often also see that the comments you said, if I could take this strength out of that strength and mix it all together, we sometimes see that as well. It is when you look at the dynamics of what you were looking for in a strong manager candidate, and I don't mean to diminish all that, but in some cases we say, and they also got to wear a cape with a big S at the end of it, because it's a tall order. You said that several times today, Mayor. There's a lot that comes with this job. And so it is very difficult sometimes to find that one candidate that literally checks every single box each time along, and I think that's what you're facing. So you want to make the right decisions for the right reasons. I fully respect that. We're not trying to force that issue upon you, but I just want to give you some context that it is a challenging marketplace. Candidates are in different positions, and they're in different searches, and they're hired and moving around a lot. It is a challenging market to recruit for. That being said, we had a lot of candidates in this pool. We do find that if we go back out to the marketplace, if something doesn't work, we have a guarantee. We're with you all the way to the finish line. So if this doesn't work, we'll work with you and go forward again. It does raise questions in the marketplace when you don't land on a first search. It's not unheard of by any stretch, but sometimes the second round of pool isn't as strong as the first round, just because you go back to the marketplace. But I say that with a big caveat. People come and go in this profession all the time, so you never know. You may see a candidate that just wasn't in the marketplace 3 months ago that may now, for whatever reason, want to be there. So you know your community better than I. I mean, I know this is a highly engaged community. I understand that. I knew that coming in. We've tried to brief all the candidates that. We have identified, I've told them all that it was unclear whether a decision would be made today. I know there were some concerns raised that if you don't make a decision today, will you lose someone or send? They recognize, they've all been in local government. They know this is a big decision. And to the extent that if you're regrouping with a meeting on Tuesday, I don't think you're going to lose anybody. I think everybody is prepared emotionally and recognizing the nature of this community. So in response to Jason's concern about if we don't make a decision, is somebody going to pull out? I don't have that sense, as long as you're making a decision sometime next week as far as getting the feedback. So I don't think there's a fear there. If this, for whatever reason, I know as Randy had mentioned, this was hard to find 2 days where we could get you all together. So if we don't make a decision next week, then I do start to worry, because you will get into losing candidates to other searches and other opportunities and things of that nature. So if the commission's prepared to discuss tonight or this afternoon, I've got a suggestion on how we might get there, or at least to call that herd a little bit further. But if it is, in fact, the will of the commission that you would like to just take a little more time to process all the information you've got, I don't think that's a problem if you wanted to go to Tuesday. But after that, I think it becomes problematic.
What's your will?
So I'll speak since I seem to be the most undecisive on it. Scott, I mean Doug, I don't know why you look a lot like
I'll
Scott.
follow the lead.
That's it.
I'll answer to whatever you call me.
You guys look alike. I'm willing to move this to the Tuesday meeting if since Doug is very comfortable with the fact that that will not spook the four. I after I hear from the mayor, and I think what I hear is he's not sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but and I want you to be sure. And if you need a couple days, and if Doug thinks that that is acceptable, I'm willing to do that. And so I would support that.
I appreciate that, and we'll hear from others. I often hear many up here say, I don't have enough information, or I'm uncomfortable with, blah, 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 and we try to honor that. It's not that I'm uncomfortable with, it's just that we've invited the public to come and talk to us, or see this crowd last night. We've invited them to watch the video today. And if we collect all that, and Lisa says that she's spoken to many, many people, well, I've been on the same network for the same less than 24 hours, and my phone's not blowing up, and it usually does. So if you've spoken to a vast majority of the public, which I can't believe is accurate, then great, but I have not. And so I would love to be true to what we have done, mostly at Commissioner Hartman's behest, is give the public their chance. Let's hear from the public. And that's where I am. Lisa.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sorry you haven't heard from the few dozen staff and people that I have, but that's okay. I'm saying that, I don't think the information is going to change. Nobody out in the public has had the chance to have the in-depth paperwork, the private, plus the Live Oak last night, plus the panels today. So there is no way anybody else out there will have the complete information that we do, as well as, the staff panel results. The other side of it is we need to start on a contract. And if we go ahead and vote today, because this is all the information we're going to get, we're not going to see the candidates again after this, that would mean that by Tuesday, we could actually be in a position to discuss the contract and prepare for that negotiating process. So we've got a lot of steps ahead of us before the first day on the job of any one of the four candidates. So I think we can move deliberately, but now.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I would love to hear your sales pitch if you know your candidates, your number one and number two, because I don't have that, and I'll just be honest. I thought I did, but I don't. And I thought I had a hard no, and I don't even have that. So I have one, like I said, that didn't interview quite as well today, but he interviewed great yesterday, one-on-one. So I would like to know why you have your number one and the reasons. And then Mama always told me to sleep on it before I make a big purchase. And so I've always done that my whole life. I've always slept on it. And before I've bought a property or a car or anything like that, this is a big purchase for our city. It's a lot of money. And it's, we don't want to make a mistake. But I would like to hear why, because the people up here are just as important to me as staff and the citizens. And I know I've polled people, but I'm with the mayor. I haven't polled everybody. There's 32,000 people. But I talked to the people last night. I talked to the people in the room today. And I know a lot of people are like us. They have their top couple of candidates. But if you know, I'm happy that you know. And I would love to hear why and what is your importance, because I will listen.
You care to offer that?
Sure. Whoops, sorry. Okay, I will say, my top choice is Kevin because of his steadiness. I will tell you right off that when the paper started coming in, that was my no reason. But as I talked with Kevin yesterday and his presentation today, I've seen a lot of innovation. And because we've been sort of on a rocky road here at City Hall, I think a nice, calm, steady voice might be a good thing. I also like the idea of a calm, steady voice in an emergency. So he ended up, for me, having a combination of calm and steady, as well as innovation, open to new ideas, looking for new ways to do things. I will say that, as I said, he seems a little too reserved when sitting, but when presenting, and he's much more dynamic. I also felt he did the best job of understanding the purpose of the PowerPoint and how a PowerPoint works. And since that's a lot of what we do, is needing to know how to run these businesses and operate like this, I thought that was important.
Thanks for being open and honest. Any other comments? So what's the commission's will? Let's start with the vote. To vote today or not to vote today. So if there's a motion, that would be great. It'll move us a little bit forward.
I'll make a motion to vote today.
Second.
And there's a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm perplexed as to if we're waiting for all the constituents to weigh in on who the candidate should be, shouldn't they have been involved in the entire process? And why were just the 5 of us involved? Why didn't we just have an open meeting with everyone so that we truly got the constituents' opinion on this? We were elected to represent them. We were the ones who were given all the written data, all of the videotapes, the one-on-ones, and we've sat here all day through these personal interviews. So nobody else has gotten that to this point. So we are the most knowledgeable on the 5 candidates that we have before us today. And that's, you know, I don't think we could go wrong with either one of the 4 of them because they were all great candidates and they all had traits that, you know, each of us kind of were looking for. But to me, 2 of them stood out. And they stood out because they said our greatest asset was quality of life, and the other one was vibrant community. And that is what I truly think is the greatest asset of New Smyrna Beach, is its citizens and its citizens' involvement. Now, we've had ample opportunity for people to, I've had 4 emails today on who number 1 should be. I've talked to everybody, as many of the staff as I can. So I think I'm confident, you know, I feel confident enough to make that decision today. My concern is if we push this to Tuesday, yes, it's a light agenda, but how many times have we gone into this light agenda and sat here till 11 o'clock at night, then you're done and you can't meet anymore and you're rushing through something. I'd rather work through this now while we have the time, the afternoon, rather than to push it off to a nighttime meeting where, oh, we have to get through this because we have to decide about this. And then, you know, that's even more pressure on you to make a decision. I'm ready to vote tonight.
Any more discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Randy, or Commissioner Harton, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I really appreciate your words because it makes me feel better. Would you elaborate on your top 2? Do you feel comfortable so that I can know where you had why, the whys?
I told you the reason why.
I mean the names, so I know.
Huh?
I know the whys, but I'd like the names, like Commissioner Martin did, or just the top 1, and why.
If I could And let me see if I can help in this before. I don't want to have people backed into corners in the process. So first, I want to be clear. If you're prepared to discuss it, we'll help you work through this today, if that's the will. My decision to you is at the end. You all said this is one of the most important, if not the most important decision you make, and I want you to feel comfortable with that you're not feeling that you're rushed into it, but there is a timeliness basis. I think everybody's agreed with regards to that. If this is a suggestion, and I probably have broken Robert's Rules of Order, so I'll defer to Kelly as you're probably parliamentarian on
Still
this
discussing
one.
the motion on the floor, it's fine, go right ahead.
But I don't want to hate you feeling, because I know this gets challenging at this stage of the game. What we often will do, we prepared with your clerk on this one and your city attorney. Sometimes what we do is when we get to this stage, we will give you a ballot with the 4 candidates and say, pick your top 2 people that you would at least be considered to go to be as a finalist, okay? So you're not necessarily forced into one, because once you get forced into one, then it raises questions about that. So I normally say, pick your 2, assuming you have 2, and then we kind of see where the group lands. You all may pick the same top 2. They may be in different spots, but you may do that. But at least then we know, okay, we're going to focus on those 2 and not necessarily the other 2. We may have 3, we may be a split vote, and you have all 4. I don't know where that leads, but many times it gets us down to a smaller number where there seems to be some consensus of maybe a majority or all of you might have at least one of that person that's the same person. So we've sometimes done it that way so that people don't feel locked in. So I throw that out. There's any number of ways to do it, but I throw that out if that's something that you might want to consider.
Thanks, Doug, appreciate that. So responding to my colleague, as with every decision that we make up here, we have all the information, much more information than you do, because we get a brief ahead of time, we read all stuff. So we have more information on every decision that we make than you do. And that's, I mean, it's available to you, but we study it. That's the job we've picked. So this is no different. And rush, I don't feel like it's a rush. And I have heard a lot from the staff, and I have heard from a variety of people. The staff is united behind 2, but the citizenry, based on what I've got, they've got 4. All right, they've got 4. So that's why I pause, because it's not a wide sample, but they're a vocal sample that have said that, and. If it is indeed the biggest decision, then I would never want to be accused of rush to judgment, and that's why I'll offer the pause. Can I handle doing it? Yep, absolutely. Be happy to vote if that's what the will of the group is. I'm just trying to influence you by talking about we always have more information, and the citizens do depend on us to call a shot, but they want to have an input, and we've invited them to the dance last night, and we've recorded this for a reason, so that they could look at it. If we don't want to give them the time to review it, and we would like to go now, I think it's a little disingenuous of what the intent was. So that's where I am.
Mayor?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I really like what Commissioner Hartman said. She gave us very valid points about why she picked her top candidate, and I'm ready to vote today, but I'm not ready to give you my top 2, because again, I have top 3 maybe or 4. So I really would really like to hear Commissioner Hartman and McGurk's top choices and why, or top choice, one or the other, because it will definitely influence mine.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor, whether even to discuss this or to pause
Discussion.
it till Tuesday night. So we need to resolve that.
You call the question?
Call the question.
Okay.
Do we have
Call
to?
the question means we're going to vote.
No, we have to vote on the question now.
That's correct. Madam City Clerk, call the roll on voting today or not?
Commissioner McGurk?
No, first you take a vote on his question. No on his question.
Okay.
The motion, I'm sorry.
He
the
want,
motion-
the question is whether we continue to discuss, and he's called the question, so we're going to vote on whether we want to keep discussing or whether we want to vote.
Yes.
So this is the vote, this is a vote on whether we want to keep discussing or whether we want to go to the vote.
Gotcha. Commissioner McGurk?
No.
Commissioner Martin?
No.
Commissioner Hartman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Breen?
No.
Mayor Cleveland?
No. Okay. So let's keep having a conversation.
Okay.
No, that wasn't.
Yeah, that was for.
not the motion.
Yeah, no.
Sure was.
The motion was to proceed today.
So when you call the question, square me away, attorney. When you call the question, we voted on whether to call it or not. We voted no not to call the question, which means we get to keep talking.
Yeah, there definitely was a misunderstanding on what we were voting on. So they were voting on whether or not to call the question. So 4 of them voted no to call the question, which was to vote. So I think there was a misunderstanding. Regardless of where we are procedurally, that was,
I thought the question was whether we kept discussing
That-
whether we
Well,
would
that-
vote.
It is indirectly because you have to have a vote on the question.
Well, which is fine. I'm just saying, I think we need clarity on what we're voting. I think it was an invalid vote because I think you could ask all 5 of us on what we were voting and we'd all have a different answer.
I disagree.
how about a motion to waive Robert's rules and let's unwind this? Okay.
Okay. So I think we're going to keep
So-
discussing.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
Commissioner McGurk.
Okay. Let me do my best to put this to bed. There's 3 people who I've heard have said we're willing to wait until Tuesday. That's it. Said and done. There's a majority. I'm not going to give you my top 2. If I give you my top 2, then I want to put it to a vote and let's move forward. It's just that simple. I think Vice Mayor just, I'm going to put words in your mouth, just said that you can vote tonight. I'm not sure what that means. That was a little bit. We need, if there's there needs to be a majority. I don't necessarily care if it's a vote or not. We can make it a vote, but what is the majority right now on whether or not we're voting today or on Tuesday? And I think that settles it.
And that is the motion that is in play, is voting today or not voting today. There's been a motion that says, I want to vote today. There was a second, and we're still discussing that. The next vote we take will be vote today or not vote today. Would you like to discuss that more?
My only suggestion was that if we take what amounts to a straw poll, we can see whether it's, if it comes up, all over the place.
Or whether we're down to 2.
Or whether we're down to 1 or 2. And that's sort of that compromise. If it comes in with all 4, we all want all 4, then perhaps we need to go off and do some more research. But what if it's a clear vote? And then we're ready to start talking contract on Tuesday.
My mind in the corporate world, we discuss why we like our top candidates. I don't like this hidden agenda of why you're going to go home and you're not going to disclose it because of fear of whatever. I don't like that. I like transparency. I love how Commissioner Hart, I'm sorry, I did that twice. Commissioner Martin actually told us why. I agree with every one of her points. I don't like this non-transparency up here. I need to know why we like. I've already said what staff has liked, what citizens has been for top candidates, not 2. Part of us is we come to conclusions and we collaborate. That's what we do. And to not talk and not collaborate, I'm going to go home and not know where I am to vote Tuesday. What's the point of that? I need to know how you feel and why.
Okay, let me help, perhaps. And I would love it if we all did what Lisa did. If I had to vote today, I would vote for James. I know he blew the questions, and that disappoints me greatly. But he can talk before the public. He does have ideas. He is math, logic, and science driven, and he had a great slate of his PowerPoint was powerful. He had ideas. He has our future in his sights. His comments to me in the small were, boy, I got to put a governor on my energy because I don't want to break me, I don't want to break your staff, and I don't want to break this city. So he knows his strengths and weaknesses in that he's fired up, ready to go, but he does, maybe you're not ready for me. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I need to slow down, and I'm delighted he has a slower gear that he's willing to go through in the name of making sure we do move forward, we do move to the future, and we don't go too fast. That he has the situational awareness to recognize he may be too fast in his current ideas and have to slow it down was an inspiration to me. I am totally with you on the fact that yesterday, top of my list, today, based on a big part, all those questions that it couldn't answer, at least 4 of them. That was a terrible play, and maybe he's kicking himself now. Who knows? But that's where if I voted today, that's where I would be.
I think that your question was directed at me as some sort of agenda. I can assure you I have no agenda, and I was simply going to afford you and the mayor the ability to have more time to make a decision. My feeling is if you know the top 2 people firmly, then we don't need any more time. If you want to know my top 2, I'll give you my top 2. It's Cowper and then Moy. Now, what I think I'd like to do at this point is go ahead and bring it to a vote today.
So point of order. We're way off track because the motion was to even continue the discussion or postpone until Tuesday. We've had ample discussion from all 5 of us on that motion, and we've not yet voted on the motion. We first need to put that motion to bed before we continue on with the process, or we put it off till Tuesday.
And I think we attempted to do that by
But we never voted.
when the question was called. The question was called, and we voted on whether to continue
The discussion.
as a vote or to discuss. So we decided not to call the question. Now, we've discussed some more. You're right in that the motion on the floor is vote today or not vote today. And so that will be the next vote we take. Anybody want to discuss any more, or are we ready to vote?
Yes, discuss.
You want to say something else about the vote on whether to vote today or not?
Yes.
Okay?
If we brought this up, do we vote today? Then I still want more discussion.
There will be. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. There's a lot more discussion coming.
I don't want to have to do the ballot like Doug said.
I understand.
Because I'm not ready for that. But I'm ready to hammer it out and hear everybody's.
Sure.
Because I don't want to say no to not voting today, go home and still not know how I'm going to vote Tuesday.
I understand.
Because we didn't discuss it.
I got it. Anybody else? Madam City Clerk, call the roll. This is the vote to whether to vote today or not.
And the affirmative is voting today.
Yes means vote today.
Commissioner McGurk?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perine?
Yes.
Mayor Cleveland?
No. Okay, so the motion carries, and now we have the opportunity to vote today. And Doug, maybe you want to walk us through your protocol?
Sure.
You've heard a protest to, hey, I don't want to have, I don't want to do that yet. I want to have some more discussion. So we won't jump to your solution because there are many of us up here would like to have some more conversation.
I'm sorry everybody's feeling some tension on this. This is a big decision, and I understand that. So our hope is that we can help you work your way through this. I had suggested the concept of everybody providing their maybe top 2 choices so that we could get a sense of what that looked like. And then normally what happens at that point, if you're going to, now looks like you're going to vote today, exactly what several of you have talked about. tell us why, or tell your colleagues about what you saw. Just as I've pointed out in this process, everybody sees things differently. Everybody sees things that resonates in one case or doesn't resonate in another case. But the goal here is to try to get you focused on potentially a smaller number than 4. I don't know if that's 1, 2, or 3, or 4. I don't know that yet. But the goal here is to at least see if there's a sense of, is there a strong consensus on one or more candidates amongst you? And then from there, do exactly what's been suggested. Have some conversation about what you saw, any questions, any concerns. Hear yourselves as a group. I'll help jump in and facilitate or add any insight as I can, but the goal here is not to just jump to a vote and then vote without that conversation. I want to assure you this is too important of a decision to just do that, so that was certainly not what I was implying.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Sounds like we're going to vote today, and it sounds at least one of us would love to know how the others feel before we get into necking it down to 2. And so maybe the protocol could be we start with one end, go to the other, and say, my top 2 are so-and-so, and here's why. Is that
Or at least, for the first point, just a top 2. And
Okay.
then after we know that, then you'll get a sense of where you are as
Sure.
a group, and then have that conversation about, allow each of you to kind of advocate or react to those names. Make sense?
Okay. Without objection? Jason, did you hear that? Okay, good. Thank you, sir.
We have speakers all around everywhere.
That's right. Randy, let's start with you.
So my top 2, in no particular order, actually it's alphabetical, is Cowper and Moy.
Jason?
Did you want an explanation with each one?
No,
Not
we're
yet.
gonna
We're
do
just
that
doing the
later.
names right
Okay,
now.
Cowper and Moore.
I'm at Slayton and Hayes.
Cowper and Moyne.
Cowper and Hayes.
Okay.
In no order.
So I think we may be there.
Yeah, so if my count is right, you've got 4 of you that have identified Cowper, and you've got 1, 2, 3 that have identified Moy, right? And then 2 that have identified Hayes, and 1 that identified Slayton. Defer to my clerk. Did I get that right? That's I heard it.
Yes, I just need Jason's repeated. I don't think I have.
Sorry, say that louder, please.
Sorry, I need Commissioner McGurk to repeat
Cowper
yours.
and Moy.
Then I did have that right. You're correct.
So, since it takes at least 3 of you,
Appropriate for us to say some whys to help?
that's where I was going
Yeah.
to go to next, Mayor. Thank you.
Good. Let's start with Valley.
Well, Cowper, I have the same things that Commissioner Martin said. He's calm. I have the same concerns that the mayor also had. He interviewed well. I felt like some of the answers were generic or vague versus detailed, like Hayes. Hayes had specific examples that I liked. I'm going to compare the 2 because they were my top choices yesterday. And Hayes had the needs of our finance very strong, leadership strong, but a lot of the citizens verbally told me they liked her the best. So she was consistent with me on my one-on-one yesterday as well as today. I liked the PowerPoint presentation from Cowper and Hayes. I did not like the last PowerPoint presentation at all. I felt it was very weak. I even wrote it in real big letters. I felt it was not where it should have been with Moy. If he couldn't have done a PowerPoint, he should have hired it done or got a staff person or a friend or whatever. But this is a professional place, and we're going to be seeing that all the time. So I had a very difficult time with his PowerPoint. It was just like typing an Excel spreadsheet and then throwing a graphic on it. I had very good things I liked about all four, though. So I'm not going to lose sleep or be mad at any of our decisions. I really am not. I'd rather make a decision than go back out and try to find another candidate.
Very good. Commissioner Hartman.
So, I think Cowper is probably the more seasoned veteran of the two. He seems a little, he's a little quieter. He's well-versed. He has the larger city experience, which was something that I was looking for. But he did hit on those, also had a little bit of humor in there. And, his big thing about the asset for the city was the quality of life. So those all resonated well with me. The only, and it's not even a negative thing, it's just, a little bit of, the voice was a little monotone, but I think at times he would pick it up and would be an excellent person. Moy was the same thing. He was well-spoken, and he was consistent with the same thing that he said up here today that he said with me on the one-on-one interviews, as they all were. I'm not saying they all weren't, but they were all consistent in the answers that they gave me yesterday, along with what they presented today. I think his slide presentation was a little weak, but I'm not so sure the city manager will be the one making slide presentations and PowerPoints. He's going to rely a lot of that on staff because they'll have, the better knowledge and the detail to that thing. But he had very meaningful answers. He thought about everything that he had, and he had some real life experiences that he was willing to share with us and how he resolved those issues. And in resolving those issues, he always did it through communication. And I think communication is going to be key moving into this new era, is that we're all going to have to open those doors because it's a big change for all of us. And then again, he also said, one of the greatest assets was the vibrant community. So those two, those resonated with me because I think that's what New Smyrna is all about. It's eclectic charm in the citizens and the quality of life in the community that we all live in, as diverse as it is, and sometimes confrontational as it can be. Those were important factors to me. Those were my top two picks. When you want for number one, that's going to be the challenge because either one of them could be number one for me. But with speaking to staff and speaking with the residents last night at the meeting, and then some residents today, and the emails that I've got, or the text messages that I've gotten, those are consistently the two names that keep coming out.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Martin.
I'm just going to say, we know that all four are very strong candidates. But what I will say about Kevin is that he was decisive. When I asked several sort of yes or no questions, black or white questions in our private meeting, he was the only one who was able to be decisive. This is what I would do. And we talked about the low energy, but I will say when I asked him about the genesis of Love Dothan, his initiative in Dothan, he said it was to energize the community. and to get the community involved and to invest in the community. But his first words were to energize the community, which I thought was a good statement. Now, so I also thought Scott Moy was a very, very strong candidate. But I wasn't sure that for where we are as a city today, that he might have the steadiness that we need to bring some calm in to a number of issues. And so that's how I made the decision to go with somebody. I thought, you know, if we have the world's worst hurricane season, that he would be able to be calm through that. If, while we're trying to get our key staff consistent and, you know, and happy and staying with us and building a team, that he would be the voice of reason for that. So I found a combination of energy and steadiness that I thought put him just slightly above the other three.
Thank you. Commissioner McGurk?
All right, I'm just gonna run down real quick what my thoughts were. Calper, basically what was said, I agree. I think this guy has tremendous upside. I think his personality came out in individual meetings. He's a little too calm. He speaks under his breath. However, I remember we used to have someone here like that. His name was Brian, and I think the perception that everybody was, you know, this guy's not like on it. And Brian was one of the most on it people I've ever seen, and his integrity was incredible. So I'm willing to look past his quiet demeanor, because I think there's something in back of it that's special. Moy, he's polished. That's the bottom line. He's been there, he's done it, he's seen it, and he's a safe pick for the city. The Slayton, tremendous possible upside, maybe the most, definitely the most of all four candidates. His potential ceiling is out of this world. But I cannot reconcile in my mind why he could not answer 3 or 4 questions. You're not sure on one, you get stumped on another, or you don't. He just, his inability to be able to answer the questions, I cannot reconcile. And Robin blew me away with her answering. What blew me away about her answering questions is, I believe I saw a person who was self-reflective in the way she answered her questions. No one else did that. She brought up and used experiences that she dealt with that did not necessarily make her look good, but she was self-reflective and answered from both a human and experience standpoint. And that just impressed me so much. My concern is I'm not sure she's ready for this town. Her lack of experience worries me. She might not have, her background was a little lacking, and I'm not sure she has the, I'm not sure New Smyrna is the right fit right now. I would absolutely love her. I would beg her to be our finance director. That's it.
Very good, awesome. I think I gave everyone in my opening all of what I thought were flaws, so I'll stay out of that. And I'm probably the lone vote for Slayton. My high energy, solid ideas, did his homework, and his direct approach were the attributes that I would commend. So, Doug, we can either have a motion, since we've got, we can go through the elimination from 2 to 1, because we've got a couple that are tied for the 1 and 2 spot, or we can go directly to a motion toward one candidate. What do you recommend?
If with your desire, I'd be glad to chime in and just add any other insights just from somebody that's gotten to know these candidates and watching them through the process. If you'd like that, I'm glad to. But if
Yeah,
not,
no,
I'll
I think
step
that'd be
aside.
I think it'd be
Yeah.
very helpful. I might note we don't have the incumbent here in the room. He is watching from home, so we will be making a decision without a guy we have all relied on very, very much to help us and guide us to who the successor would be. So another reason for my delay, which is we're not going to delay.
Understood. Okay, gotcha. Well, with that as a background, I appreciate the comments, and I will tell you, the candidates will appreciate the comments. You heard them all say, listen, at the end of the day, you're at a tough decision, and every time they go through a process like this, they learn about themselves, and they learn what works and what doesn't, and what they have to do, going forward in any other searches as well. So appreciate, and I know that they appreciate that feedback as well. So I'll just take them kind of in the order in which you provided, with Kevin being your having the most votes in terms of the 1 and 2 candidates to proceed. We often see folks that come out of a community development or planning background aspire to be city managers, and it's a relatively easy transition, in the sense that as a community developer, you typically are also involved in economic development, which he indicated he was. You have to understand all the dynamics of your community, and you don't run all the departments, but you interface with all the departments. You have to interface with your public works, your streets, your utilities, your parks and rec, transportation. All those elements come together, and so they have a sense of what that, obviously building permits and things of that nature, construction activities, things like that. And they also know the assets of the organization to recognize in the economic development world, how do you best position your organization to attract the business and industry, whatever the target would be. And so because we see community development folks, we see finance director folks who, in a similar vein, have to understand how all the pieces come together, but don't necessarily run those departments, but understand the pieces. And the third element is typically people that are in economic development, because they have to, in a similar vein, interact with all the departments of your operation. So from that standpoint, what I heard Kevin say, and as I've gotten to see him through this process, he got involved and he wanted to become a city manager because he felt in his previous roles as a planner, he saw silos and dynamics that were not good cross-pollination in discussions on projects and issues. And that was his motivation to go forward. And I think as he talked yesterday and talked today, what I saw him say is that whole idea of community visioning and outreach was a way to encourage communication, both internal and with your community. I flagged one of the things that I was impressed, and he highlighted it in his writing and his background, but also today he touched on it as well. When your community, from my standpoint, has some challenges in the sense that you got to figure out what you want to be. And there's a lot of strong opinions on that. You've heard those today amongst yourselves and through your community. I heard it last night as I was listening to the comments from your residents to all the different candidates. As a city manager, we always think the best way to try to do that is to have some good community conversations and put it all on the table and sort it out, because otherwise the 5 of you are always in conflict about what your constituents are asking you to say, but you have a difficult time quantifying it. So one of the things that we identified in the brochure, that as I was evaluating your organization, it was probably ripe for you to go through a strategic visioning planning process. One of the things that Kevin brought was a very dynamic process like that in his community. Loved Dothan. And so whether that all plays well and whether it happens in exactly the same way, but that was kind of what I saw him convey in not only how you bring your community together on these challenging issues, but how you align your staff, how you align you as a commission as you're trying to deal with these issues. So I think there's a lot of strength there, because if I'm looking at somebody that I think strategic planning is something you really need to get your arms around to help you find that common ground. Not everybody's going to agree, but help you find at least some common direction so that you're not being pulled in 30 different directions going further. So I thought from his standpoint that was pretty strong. I thought his presentation was very strong today in a similar effort. He was right on time in terms of the amount of time he had available. Content was there. Presentation was a good skill. Didn't necessarily read directly from the slides. All those things were how you're trying to point it. And that's exactly what we're trying to say. This is a role managers have to do regularly. And if you don't do that well, that can be painful. So I thought in his defense, he did really well in that function as well. The other pieces you all highlighted, so I won't go back into that effort. I think that his style is quiet but commanding in the sense that when he speaks, he has good content behind it. He had stronger interviews at certain times than others, like all your candidates did. They all, some panels resonated, others didn't resonate. Part of that's getting into the flow of the process, which is why we throw so many things at him. But so my sense is his style is his style, though. He's not, you can't change the stripes on a zebra. So I think you know what you're getting there. I think it's a steadiness and it's a confidentness. It's not going to be necessarily bouncing off, him and he versus James are obviously two different styles altogether. But recognize you're not going to likely, you've seen enough of that I think you know what his style is. So that's just the point to reference there. Scott, I didn't know Scott before this search either, as I didn't with Kevin. He has good Florida experience. He's been in a coastal area. He brings county and city background, so he understands the differences. You are a leading city here in Volusia County. You've got to be able to understand that process. I've got friends and colleagues that are county managers, and I've got some that will never be a county manager because of the dynamics. He indicated, I've been on both sides. I prefer cities to counties, constitutional officers, all the other dynamics as well. But he understands how that process works. And you have to have good intergovernmental relationships, and a number of you said you like that aspect as well. So I thought that he brought that together. You all commented on his PowerPoint. It was not very strong relative to your other candidates. That's something I think, if I will be working with all your candidates, I always tell them about where I think they need to address some work. Good news, bad news, that many times managers will have the content and staff puts it together. But he also said he generally does his presentations for his group. So your staff noted that yesterday, and that was flagged as a potential. So that may just be a coaching and an issue to resolve and address, because it is certainly something that would be expected out of the manager to be able to address overall. Feedback, he seemed very much at ease in communicating with your community, your residents. I didn't obviously sit into the one-on-ones, but his style was very approachable and even-tempered and just easygoing. And there was a sense that he could kind of cut across all the different spectrums and the broad kind of tapestry of your community, that his style fit in well. He's got history in this area. He knows the shoreline, knows this area, has traveled here, has had family in the extended area as well. So there's not as much of a potential of a cultural fit. Your lifestyle is something that he is familiar with and understands that, and certainly would have FEMA experience and recognition of those dynamics. Many of you commented on his response. Very good examples. Paused and reflected on his responses, but had good real-life examples in terms of being able to address those questions and issues. So I think you flagged that well as well. And on Robin, like I mentioned before, community development finance folks are ones we see going further. One of you had mentioned about the self-reflective aspect. She's been in a couple of challenging communities. We talked about that when we were going through the process, and so anytime a manager goes through that, that's a good sign that you can step back and, would I do things differently? How would I, maybe there's nothing you could do differently, but clearly there was a sense of understanding that, how do I address an issue and challenge? And I think many of her responses certainly reflected that. Going to be very strong on finances. She raised it. I've mentioned before, it all comes down to money. Your priorities and your checkbook determine where you're putting your money or not putting your money, and matching your priorities. So I think she brings that financial understanding. She has that component. That's a concern because you've got transition going on in your finance department. And whether your city manager is a strong budgeteer or not, they have to always know finances. Or if they're not a real strong budget person, they've got to have a really strong CFO that they can relate upon. So she brings that to the table. That's obviously her area of strength and expertise. Similar area, has grown up in the area, so she knows there's a cultural understanding of what New Smyrna Beach feels like. She seemed very much at ease last night in watching her interact with your community, so I think that cultural fit and that understanding all makes sense as well. So I think overall, that's the things that I would perceive that maybe hadn't necessarily been identified. And on James Slayton, Mayor, you hit it on the head. A lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. He came with ideas and thoughts. I know he had to scramble to put it all together. I write a little of that off in the fact that he has been with one organization for 20 years, and he's never really had to go through a process like this. And so this was a little bit of a learning curve for him. He and I chatted a little bit afterwards. He appreciated the opportunity. He was really, this is just something different. And so, but a lot of energy. He's got a good reputation. I think there's a lot there that's inside that didn't necessarily come out in the best way. I think, and he told me the same, so I'm not talking out of school. He says, I'm much better one-on-one than I am in doing an effort like what he did today. But I watched him as I did the other candidates last night, and he seemed very much at ease in those conversations with a lot of rapid-firing conversations and questions coming at him as well. So I think, the dynamic of not being through interviews very often, as you said, Mayor, I think showed itself today, and I think he would reflect that as well, that's something that he would learn from going forward. So their styles, you've looked at their disc profiles. One of your commissioners asked me last night, is there a typical disc profile? And I say, tell me what city and where, and I'll tell you if it's typical or not, because every community has something different that they want. You have a couple candidates that are very similar. Many candidates are strong Ds and strong Is. They're either very strong in dominance or very strong in influence. But other communities are looking for that steadiness, which you've got reflected as well. So it really is a matter of what you're trying to find, because what is a perfect city manager in one community will be an abysmal failure in a different community, because what your expectations and how you want them to carry themselves will be dramatically different. So I don't know that solves your problem, but I just want to give you some insights from somebody that's kind of seen things and watched these candidates throughout the whole process to just add some more color to your deliberations.
Appreciate that. So what's the protocol next?
So you've got a couple candidates that enjoy the majority or close to a majority of your group. I would suggest that unless there's further discussion about why you want to advocate for one or the other, I think at some point you say, is there a motion to make a decision and see where that shakes itself out?
Is there a motion is there a nomination for the next city manager?
What was that question?
Is there a nomination? Would you like to move to select a city manager of the four? If so, who would you like that to be?
Yeah. I thought we were looking for ballots.
No.
It'll be publicly. So you either declare, or we can write them down, and then she'll tally them up and then say who voted for who. So however you'd like to do it.
I'll make a motion to nominate Kevin Cowper.
So motion for Cowper.
Second.
And a second. Any more discussion? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Preen,
Yes.
Commissioner Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner McGurk,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartman,
No.
Mayor Cleveland.
Yes. We have selected the next city manager.
Could I?
Thank you, crowd.
If I could only ask, and I recognize this, and I'm many times when groups get to this point where maybe the candidate that they wanted didn't get necessarily selected, but sometimes groups will take a second vote to say, listen, that may not have been my first vote, but I can support the candidate. Candidates will always want to know that if it's not a unanimous decision. So I'm not trying to change a vote. I just want to pose that, because sometimes you voted on the record, but then you say, okay, can we
Motion to reconsider the previous vote.
That's where I'm getting at. Yeah.
So moved.
We got a motion to reconsider. And was that your second, Lisa,
Yes.
to his motion?
Yes.
Wait.
Very good.
I need, for discussion, I need discussion.
We got a motion and a second. Let's
Why-
discuss.
I'm not understanding the
Just say
motion to
yes and
reconsider.
you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
If I may, Jason, I think the question is the candidate wants to know that they've got before they've even started, they at least have support from the entire body, that there's not a
Understood.
red flag. That's all I was getting to.
Understood.
Which is why I voted yes.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a motion to reconsider the vote. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right,
That's
so
correct.
Madam City Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Hartman,
Yes.
Commissioner McGurk.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perine.
Yes.
Commissioner Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Cleveland.
Yes. Thank you.
Motion to
Motion-
nominate
Go
Kevin
ahead.
Cowper for their next city manager.
A motion for Cowper. Waiting on a
Second.
second. And a second. Madam City Clerk, call the roll.
Vice Mayor Perine.
Yes.
Commissioner Martin.
Yes.
Commissioner McGurk.
Yes.
Commissioner Hartman.
Yes.
Mayor Cleveland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We have now selected the next city manager.
Great. Well, first and
Okay.
foremost, congratulations. I know this is.
Doug, for you, thank you so very much, with you and your company. Thank you again for the entire staff, senior staff, thank you for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. We are adjourned.
Hold on, hold on.